Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 81. Long Chu continued, King Xian, do you know what the second ring is called? Lu Yin looked at Long Chu. On the surface, the second ring is part of the 13 imperial squadrons, but in reality, it's just a killing machine that spies on us. They're called the True Defense Force and their purpose is to guard against us. What do you want me to do? Lu Yin asked. Long Chu whispered, regain control of the Xian family's military and make decisions for the Xian royal army. We're soldiers, not petty people who play with the rich and powerful. We're definitely not enemies of the empire. Lu Yin smiled bitterly. Commander Long, you think too highly of me. You're a smart man and should understand my current situation. To put it nicely, I'm the Xian king, but to put it bluntly, I'm just a pawn that His Majesty is using to repay the kindness of his ancestors. To His Majesty, giving me the title of King Xian is already giving the Xian family's former subordinates an explanation. It'll be difficult for me to regain power. How will you know if you don't do it, Your Highness? The third ring supports you. Long Chu shouted. Lu Yin waved his hand. This isn't urgent. Is there anything else, Commander Long? Long Chu exhaled and sat down. There's something I hope you can help me with. What is it? Lu Yin looked at him. Long Chu said, General Sigmund Mathers was also a former subordinate of the Xian family, but he was arrested because of the trial on Earth. I hope you can help save him. He must have been framed. Why are you so sure? Lu Yin frowned. Long Chu lowered his voice. His Majesty didn't give General Mathers any chance to explain himself. He even sealed off the news the moment he learned of Baruda's betrayal. It's obvious that someone was afraid of complications and slandered His Majesty. They couldn't wait to kill General Mathers. Otherwise, His Majesty wouldn't have convicted him so arbitrarily. Lu Yin tapped his fingers on the table, deep in thought. Long Chu stared at Lu Yin, his eyes bloodshot. It was obvious that he hadn't slept all night and was very anxious. After a while, Lu Yin looked at Long Chu. I understand. I'll immediately seek an audience with His Majesty and do my best. Long Chu was delighted. Thank you, Your Highness. Lu Yin nodded and asked Zhou Xian to see them out. He watched Long Chu's departing figure with a cold gaze. This is the second time and he still dares to make a move. Does he really think I'm easy to deal with? Silver had given him a slip of paper on the Perseverance that contained information about the Xian family's former subordinates, as well as information about some of the traitors. Long Chu was one of those traitors. He was a member of Sicker. Long Chu's goal was simple. He wanted to force Lu Yin to save Sigmund. With Lu Yin's current strength, there would be no good outcome if he showed up. Not only would he fail to save Sigmund, but he would also leave an impression on undying Yushan that he was trying to reorganize Xian's old subordinates as soon as possible. Many people would see his ignorance and mock his blindness. That way, his position as King Xian would be ruined in the Great Yu Empire. No one would help someone who was blindly arrogant and couldn't see the situation clearly. But if he didn't help, he would offend Purple Mountain's old subordinates. Although Lu Yin didn't understand why his family had made him King Xian, this identity was definitely useful, and the old subordinates of Xian were bound to be his future helpers. If he offended them, it would be troublesome in the future. No matter how he dealt with it, he was in a dilemma. Sicker's methods were good. Lu Yin narrowed his eyes and muttered to himself for a moment before leaving King Xian's residence and heading to the imperial palace. News that King Xian wanted to plead for Sigmund spread quickly throughout the capital Star, and countless people sneered when they heard the news. 27 corpse kings escaped, and this is the work of the Neo-Human Alliance. His Majesty obviously knows that Sigmund is innocent, or he wouldn't have dared to return. However, this matter requires a scapegoat, or the Great Yu Empire will face pressure from the Innerverse. The Neo-Human Alliance is the enemy of the human domain, and it's a threat no less than the other astral domains. Even His Majesty can't handle it, but this King Xian actually dares to show up? He's courting death. Raz was pleased with himself. He's just making things difficult for His Majesty. If Sigmund doesn't die, then His Majesty will have to bear the pressure. This Lu Yin can't see the situation clearly and thinks that he's the leader of Xian's old subordinates. The Xian family only exists in name. Sicker shook his head and smiled. It's not that he can't see the situation clearly, it's just that he doesn't understand it. King Zishan? Who would take him seriously? Only the crown prince would give him some face in order to show his benevolence. He'll soon experience the consequences of blind arrogance. Sicker looked at Roz and his expression darkened. I heard you lost to Wu Kai in a race last night? Roz froze, embarrassed. It won't happen again. Sicker snorted. What did you promise him? Roz was put in a difficult position. Speak, Sicker barked. Roz hesitated. Please plead for Sigmund in the court. Sicker slapped Roz across the face, sending him flying back a few meters. You unfilial son, how dare you make such a bet? The court is where the empire discusses matters of state, and every decision affects countless people. This is not a game you can play around with. How am I supposed to explain this to His Majesty? Kneel in the courtyard and don't get up for 3 days. Roz covered his mouth and ran away with an ugly expression. Sicker rubbed his aching head. At this moment, it wasn't just Sicker who was mocking Lu Yin's ignorance. In a pink room, the little lowly Peach stared at the screen with sparkling eyes. Countless snacks were displayed on it and she was almost drooling. There was a knock on the door, followed by a pleasant voice. Captain, there's news that King Zishan wishes to plead for Sigmund. Peach blinked. A good person. There was a pause. What did you say? Peach said matter-of-factly. I said he's a good person. Sigmund is clearly wronged and no one else would dare to plead for him. My attitude towards him in the court wasn't good, so I should find a chance to apologize. The door was silent. Within the imperial palace, the undying Yushan had been standing there for 2 hours with his eyes closed. No one dared to disturb him. After a while he opened his eyes. What is it? A palace maid who had just arrived respectfully reported. Your Majesty, King Zishan requests an audience. Let him in, the undying Yushan replied. Lu Yin followed a palace maid into the palace, where Bronson waited outside for him. As soon as he left, Crown Prince Doran and Second Prince Duque arrived at the same time. Seeing Lu Yin's back, Doran smiled. Why are you here, second brother? Duque replied lazily. To see father. What about you, big brother? Me too, Doran said. Duque glanced at the palace. Then why aren't you going in? Second brother? Why aren't you going in? Doran asked. Duque pouted. Stop smiling at me, it makes me sick. Doran sighed. So what if I don't smile? Second brother, don't tire yourself out in life, it'll be hard. Duque picked at his ear. You should say that to yourself, but with me chasing after you, you'll be tired even if you don't want to. Is the throne really that important to you? You don't even acknowledge me as your big brother, Doran whispered as he stared at Duque. Duque Yushan ignored him and walked straight into the palace. Sco. If we're any slower, father will be angered to death by that King Zishan. I don't want him to die before I can become crown prince. The throne will be yours. Doran sighed and walked into the palace. Bronson's expression was calm. The struggle for the throne was bloody, but the Great Yu Empire was an exception. Undying Yushan only had 5 children, and the 3rd and 4th had died in the Innerverse, leaving only the crown prince, 2nd prince and 5th princess. The throne had to be given to one of the 3, but the 5th princess wasn't interested. The crown prince and 2nd prince had been fighting for it, but it was a little too open and they even dared to speak of it in public. Lu Yin greets your majesty. Undying Yushan looked at a glowing purple plant and waved to Lu Yin. Come take a look, this plant comes from a strange planet, it doesn't have a name yet. Lu Yin walked closer and looked at the purple plant. It was round and grew up in segments, emitting strange undulations that he couldn't tell if it was strong or weak. Don't get close, it's very domineering right now. Lu Yin was confused. Domineering? Undying Yushan nodded. It can kill explorers. Lu Yin's expression changed and he quickly retreated, looking at the purple plant in shock. It's that powerful? The undying Yushan laughed heartily as he looked at the purple plant. He approached it step by step and to Lu Yin's surprise reached out to touch it. He then turned to Lu Yin. Do you want to touch it? It's very comfortable. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 82. Lu Yin's eyes twinkled as he stepped forward and reached out to touch the purple plant. It was soft and comfortable, and there was also a sense of recovery as well as a faint fragrance. The undying Yushan looked at the plant and sighed. Nature's laws of survival are cruel. This plant will restrain itself in the face of powerhouses, and no matter how they touch it, it will not attack. Even if the surrounding creatures resist, it will not move. Thus, this plant was the only one that survived on that planet and was brought to me. In front of me, it will always be an ornamental plant. It has no other use, even if it has the strength of an explorer. Lu Yin's eyes narrowed. The undying Yushan was warning him. What business do you have with me? The undying Yushan asked. Lu Yin replied respectfully. During Earth's trial, I accidentally heard some things. I heard that there might be a corpse king hidden there. The undying Yushan was shocked and looked at Lu Yin. What did you say? You know the location of the corpse king? I'm not sure, but it might be. It was vague. The undying Yushan lowered his voice. What about the coordinates? Lu Yin sent the coordinates to the undying Yushan, who immediately sent them out. He then looked at Lu Yin and smiled. Have a seat and rest, we'll have results soon. Lu Yin nodded and sat down. At the same time, Doran and Duque arrived and looked at the scene in astonishment. King Zishan hadn't pleaded for Sigmund? Why wasn't their father angry? Why are you two here? The undying Yushan asked curiously. The two quickly bowed. The undying Yushan nodded. Since you're here, let's sit together and wait. The two were puzzled, but they didn't ask any questions and calmly sat beside Lu Yin. Lu Yin nodded to the two and didn't speak. A palace maid served snacks. Half an hour passed quickly and the undying Yushan's gadget beeped. He looked at it and smiled, looking at Lu Yin with praise. Well done, there were 3 corpse kings in total. You'll be the first to be credited. Lu Yin quickly stood up. Uncle's army was invincible, that's why we were able to capture the corpse kings. Father, what corpse kings? Doran was puzzled. Undying Yushan explained the situation to the two, and they both looked at Lu Yin in shock. The Neo-Human Alliance was extremely destructive, and the destruction of any corpse king that escaped from Earth was a great merit. Thus, the fact that 27 corpse kings had escaped from Earth had shaken the Empire, forcing Undying Yushan to use Sigmund Mathers as a scapegoat. Now Lu Yin had provided the coordinates of 3 corpse kings to help the Empire eliminate the Neo-Human Alliance, which was definitely a great merit. Even if it couldn't make up for the loss of 27 corpse kings, it still made the Empire look better. Well done, royal brother, Doran praised. Duque Yushan sized up Lu Yin in astonishment. He'd thought Lu Yin to be an idiot, but it turned out he had some brains. No wonder he'd been able to toy with those people on Earth and even defeat the newly awakened Night King. Interesting. Undying Yushan laughed heartily. Little Yin, you've done a great service. If you have any requests, feel free to ask. As long as it's within my means, I won't refuse. Lu Yin took a few steps back and bowed respectfully. Uncle, General Sigmund saved my life during Earth's trial. I implore you to announce to the world that General Sigmund was the one who provided the Corpse King's coordinates. The 3 fell silent. Doran and Duque looked at each other in astonishment. So it was back to the same topic again, but this time it wasn't a plea for leniency but a transfer of credit. The Undying Yushan's expression was solemn, but he didn't speak. Lu Yin bowed, his eyes flickering. He knew that 3 Corpse Kings was a great service, and capturing one that had escaped was already impressive enough. The Neo-Human Alliance wasn't something the Great Yu Empire could contend against, so this was a great contribution that he could use to gain some authority. However, he didn't. Sigmund represented not only himself, but also Zishan's old subordinates, as well as Lu Yin's reputation for being grateful. Lastly, the most important thing was to repay a debt of gratitude. In this era of popular opinion, a good reputation far outweighed some authority. With his current strength, even if he had some authority, it would be a drop in the bucket. He had never overestimated himself. He was just a sentinel ant that no one would care about. So what if he was given authority over the Empire's military? No one would listen to him. What he needed now was a solid foundation and reputation. After a while, the Undying Yushan spoke. You have to think this through. Are you sure you want to do this? Lu Yin was resolute. Please grant my wish, Your Majesty. The Undying Yushan nodded. All right, but this contribution isn't enough to offset Sigmund's crimes. At most, it can save his life. Lu Yin was grateful. Thank you, Your Majesty. The Undying Yushan nodded and looked deeply at Lu Yin before turning to have Doran and Duke Yushan leave. He walked up to Lu Yin. Answer me, did you really save Sigmund to repay him for saving your life? Lu Yin looked into the undying Yushan's eyes and answered sincerely, "Yes, your majesty." The undying Yushan stared into Lu Yin's eyes for a while before smiling. "You're very similar to Zishan. He's just as grateful as you are, as expected of the Zishan family. Alright, I'm tired, you can go back." Lu Yin nodded and left. The undying Yushan watched Lu Yin's retreating figure and sighed emotionally. "Your descendants are very similar to you." Lu Yin hadn't even reached the Grand Astral Sect when the undying Yushan issued an imperial edict. "Sigmund has redeemed himself through meritorious service. His death sentence has been pardoned, but there is insufficient evidence for his treason. Temporarily detained." Countless officials and nobles of the Great Yu Empire were shocked when they received the edict. Most didn't know what was going on, and only the nobles on the capital star knew that King Zishan had gone to the palace. Sicker stared blankly at the edict. How is this possible? Redeeming himself through meritorious service? What meritorious service? What did King Zishan do? It wasn't just Sicker who was confused, but many others as well. Outside the Grand Astral Gate, Bronson stared at the screen in shock. He had never said anything about Lu Yin, as his duty was to ensure King Zishan's safety. Even so, he had been disdainful of Lu Yin's request to enter the palace to plead on Sigmund's behalf. But now Bronson felt like he had to re-evaluate this King Zishan. He had actually succeeded, and it seemed like this person wasn't all brawn and no brains, nor was he blindly arrogant. "Boss, you're out." Zhou Xian was excited. Lu Yin wasn't happy, speaking as if he had just been released from prison. "Bronson, do you know where Vice Treasurer Sicker lives?" Bronson was stunned. "Yes." "Take me there," Lu Yin said. Bronson nodded. They boarded the aircraft and set the route, quickly arriving at Xenu Star's runway. This was Lu Yin's first time visiting the capital, and it was as he had imagined. It was filled with technology, but there were also some retro buildings and a lot of greenery. Spacecraft after spacecraft flew past Lu Yin, and from time to time, people would look at him in surprise. His aircraft was too eye-catching and could be considered the best. Not far away, a huge screen showed an innocent-looking girl singing at the top of her lungs. The ground and bridges were packed with people. High up in the sky, the 3 rings of the continent were clearly visible, almost as if they were solid clouds. "Boss, look, so many beauties." Zhou Xian exclaimed as he looked down. Lu Yin wasn't interested. He had been in the Innerverse before, and the Great Yu Empire paled in comparison. Up ahead, an aircraft suddenly rushed over and swerved to catch up with Lu Yin. Through the glass, Lu Yin could see a pretty girl winking at him. "Hey handsome, let's have a match and see who's faster." Lu Yin's lips curled up. "Sure, let's bet." Her eyes lit up. "Go ahead." 5-star crystals, Lu Yin said. The woman's jaw dropped. "Are you crazy? 5 cubic meters? Do you even have that? Don't play if you can't afford it." She snorted and turned to leave. Zhou Xian felt it was a pity. "Boss, you shouldn't have scared her." Lu Yin smiled nonchalantly. Technology was advanced and there were too many beauties around. He didn't care unless they were as beautiful as Bai Shui. Still, his price had been too high. The strongest students in Earth's trial only had an average of 1-star crystal. Only people like Roz and Jenny Anna had more. Ordinary students didn't even have one. The girl from before was just an ordinary student. She only had a few star crystals on her at most, so 5-star crystals was definitely a shock to her. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 83. Lu Yin didn't have any star crystals on him, and he didn't even have any money. He should probably go to the Mavis Bank and see how much undying Yushan had given him. Xenu Star was huge, but most of the nobles lived close to the palace. 10 minutes later, the two arrived at a luxurious manor. This was Sicker's home. Bronson walked out of the void at the same time. Lu Yin led the two into the manor, but they were stopped by the guards. "Tell Sicker that King Zishan is here to greet me," Lu Yin said. The guard was shocked and hurried to report. It didn't take long for Sicker to arrive with Roz. "Bastard, why didn't you invite His Highness in?" Sicker reprimanded the guard before bowing respectfully. "Please forgive His Highness for not going out to welcome you." Roz bowed respectfully as well, his eyes flashing with hatred. Lu Yin smiled. "Please forgive my sudden visit, Lord Sicker." I apologize for disturbing you. Sicker replied, It is my honor to have King Zishan here, please come in. Lu Yin nodded and did not stand on ceremony as he led the way inside. Sicker's mansion was luxurious, but that was only to an average level. It was nothing compared to his status as the vice-treasurer, and he was a cautious person. His words were watertight and he was very respectful towards Lu Yin, even though the latter had no real power. His behavior in front of and behind the scenes was to the point that even Lu Yin admired him. Many people had one attitude towards the emperor, but another when they were behind his back, but Sicker was different. It was as if he was living under undying Yushan's watchful eyes, and he always thought of undying Yushan in everything he did. There was no way to find fault with him and he was a very powerful person. He couldn't help but recall Silver's introduction. Although Sicker was the vice-treasurer of the empire, he had taken over the treasurer, Bailey, and was in charge of the empire's finances. Otherwise, the 12th Squadron wouldn't have taken a liking to him. Most people would have a headache dealing with someone like him, but Lu Yin liked him because he was smart. My lord, my son Raz offended you during the trial, please forgive him. Sicker immediately apologized and had Raz apologize to Lu Yin. Lu Yin smiled, Lord Sicker is too polite. Trials are battles and I hope that Lord Sicker won't blame me for being too harsh on your son. Your Highness is right to teach him a lesson. Otherwise this brat would think that he's so powerful in Yu Academy. It's good to let him broaden his horizons and know that there's always someone as talented as your Highness, laughed Sicker. Lu Yin smiled back at him. Both of them were very hypocritical. Actually, Lu Yin's visit had come as a surprise to Sicker. He didn't know what Lu Yin's goal was. Raz had bewitched Varen to show off his power on the Perseverance in an attempt to embarrass Lu Yin, but that incident had already passed. As for the matter of Long Chu, Sicker didn't think anyone knew that Long Chu was one of his men. So why had Lu Yin come? Denounce him? It doesn't look like it. Lord Sicker, I've heard that the planet you were born on has beautiful scenery, Lu Yin asked curiously. Sicker smiled. Yes, I was born in. Soon an hour had passed. Zhou Xian stood behind Lu Yin, bored to death. He didn't know what Lu Yin was up to. The same was true for Raz, who simply stood beside Sicker and watched as the two chatted about all sorts of things. Everything about the Great Yu Empire was new to Lu Yin, and he could ask countless questions. However, Sicker was different. As the vice-treasurer he had a lot of things to deal with, but he couldn't directly refuse Lu Yin's questions. He could only answer them in detail, from the planet's scenery to the local customs and customs, to various matters related to the trial and even gossip. 2 more hours passed just like that. Russ couldn't take it anymore. Sicker coughed and picked up his teacup. His meaning was simple. He wanted to see Lu Yin off. However, Lu Yin acted as if he didn't see it and took a sip as well. Another hour passed and Sicker coughed again. Your Highness, may I know why you've come to see me? Lu Yin replied, It's nothing. I just wanted to pay a visit to Lord Sicker and gain some knowledge from him. After all, I've interacted with your son a lot and know that he's a profound scholar. I wanted to learn more about him. Long Chu also told me that Lord Sicker is very knowledgeable. Sicker's eyes flashed and he nodded, muttering to himself for a moment before whispering a few words to Raz. Raz gritted his teeth and left with an ugly expression. Not long after, Raz handed Sicker a cosmic ring. Sicker smiled at Lu Yin. Your Highness has just arrived in the capital, so there are many things that you can't do personally. You can hire a few servants to run errands for you. I've received a favor from King Zishan's residence in the past, so please accept this small gift as a token of my respect to King Zishan's residence. Lu Yin was stunned. How could I accept this? He accepted the ring naturally. Raz was disdainful. Sicker smiled. You're welcome, Your Highness. Lu Yin stood up. In that case, I'll accept it. Thank you again, Lord Sicker. Sicker stood up and bowed respectfully. I'll see you out, Your Highness. At the door, Lu Yin stepped out of Sicker's residence and suddenly turned back. Lord Sicker, when will you be free? I'll come visit again. Sicker smiled. My apologies, Your Highness, I've been too busy recently. If there's anything you want to know, we can discuss it outside the Grand Astral Gate after the court. Lu Yin grunted. All right, goodbye. Sicker's face sank as he watched Lu Yin's back. Father, what's that bastard trying to do? He wants to come again? Raz was furious. Sicker coldly replied, He's testing me and also warning me that if I attack him again, he'll come again. Did he really think that he could do anything to us with his status as King Zishan? Roz mocked. Sikar's gaze darkened, realizing that this person was beyond his control. How did he know that Long Chu was his subordinate? No one knew about this outside of him and the second prince, not even Roz. This person had just saved Sigmund, so he wasn't simple. Send someone to find out where he's gone, Sikar ordered. My lord, King Zishan has gone to Lord Bailey's residence, a soldier immediately reported. Sikar's gaze changed and he clenched his fists. King Zishan had come to his residence first, then Bailey's. This was a clear indication that King Zishan knew that he had taken over Bailey's authority, or he wouldn't have gotten the order wrong. There had to be someone behind King Zishan, or else he wouldn't know so much about the capital star. Roz, remember, don't provoke him for now, Sikar said in a low voice. Roz didn't understand, but he didn't dare to refute his father. Bailey's residence wasn't far from Sikar's, and they were both in the same noble circle. Lu Yin was respectfully invited in by Bailey, and after half an hour of conversation, Bailey gave him a cosmic ring without hesitation. Sikar had many misgivings, but Bailey didn't. He was just a puppet and had plenty of money. He gave Lu Yin a crystal card from the Mavis Bank that looked even more exquisite than the one Sikar had given him. It's my honor to have your highness here. Please take care of me in the future. Bailey politely smiled as he saw Lu Yin out. Lu Yin smiled. You're too polite, Lord Bailey, please leave. Bailey nodded and watched Lu Yin leave. When he was out of sight, he spat, What the hell are you trying to extort me? Let's see how long you can be so smug in the future. Lu Yin was in a good mood, very good. When Crown Prince Doran Yushan had given him a greeting gift, he had already thought of going from house to house and asking for bribes. No greeting gifts. If they gave, he would leave. If they didn't, he wouldn't leave. He had all the time in the world. Anyway, he was just an idle prince with no real power and nothing mattered. So what if he was sued? Who could sue him for bribery? Who would bribe an idle sentinel prince? Besides, Undying Yushan had promised that no one would bully him as long as he was in power. This promise had to be used as soon as possible, or who knew when Undying Yushan would die. As for his reputation, he didn't care what the courtiers thought of him. Everyone was greedy, but why would Undying Yushan tolerate it? It was because they were capable of doing things instead of just being greedy. Greed wasn't scary, but greed without doing anything was. Sikar's greed was definitely astronomical, but he had managed the empire's finances well and no one dared to criticize him. Lu Yin was the complete opposite of Sikar. He wasn't in power, and no matter how greedy he was, he wouldn't arouse fear. Instead, it would lower the wariness of many people. He had spent so much effort pretending to be a descendant of the Zishan family, and if he didn't get anything in return, he would feel sorry for himself. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 84. He spent the next 3 days asking for bribes, reaping a bountiful harvest. 5 Mavis Bank crystal cards, 12 Empire crystal cards and 200 star crystals. Susan's jaw dropped and Bronson's face twitched. This was the first time he'd seen someone so shameless that he'd come all the way here to ask for money. Lu Yin was grinning from ear to ear. He had visited more than a dozen courtiers in 3 days, and none of them had given him much. They hadn't even dared to give him too much, but when added together it was still pretty good. He should do this more often in the future. Not bad, not bad. It was a pity that many courtiers had closed their doors to visitors. Right, it was time to go to the Mavis Bank to exchange for some money. He felt like he was missing something when he didn't have any. Bronson set the route to the Mavis Bank, Lu Yin said in high spirits, feeling like a nouveau riche. Within the palace, several officials reported to Lu Yin, Your Majesty, King Zishan has used his status to his advantage and has asked for bribes. Your Majesty, please uphold justice. Your Majesty, please uphold justice. The Undying Yushan drank his tea tiredly and asked slowly, Did you give him anything? No, Your Majesty, we didn't see him. We don't have money to bribe him. Then how do you know he's asking for bribes? The Undying Yushan asked. Another courtier replied, This humble subject has heard that Lord Bailey, Lord Sikar, and Lord Galau Pilo were all asked for bribes. Heard? My officials are suing King Zishan based on hearsay? Did Sikar and the others admit to it? The Undying Yushan asked sternly. The officials were terrified and didn't dare to say another word. How could Sicker and the others admit to it? The undying Yushan sipped his tea. I know that King Zishan visited some officials, but from what I know they gave him some gifts. He's a child after all, so it's not too much to give him some gifts. What do you think? Yes, Your Majesty, it's not too much. The officials didn't dare to say anything else. The undying Yushan was clearly on King Zishan's side. All right, you may leave. The undying Yushan waved his hand. The officials hurriedly left. Undying Yushan couldn't help but laugh as he tapped on the screen. There was some information about Earth's trial, and it was highlighted that Lu Yin had captured dozens of students and robbed them all. Being so fond of money isn't the Zishan family's way of doing things. In the end, he's still young. Undying Yushan shook his head and smiled, not minding the matter. The Mavis Bank on the capital planet wasn't too far from the palace, and the influence of these enormous companies that spanned weaves far surpassed that of the Weave empires. However, in order to show respect to the Great Yu Empire, the Mavis Bank's building wasn't too tall, and it wasn't even one of the top 5 buildings in the capital. Still, no one dared to underestimate this place. Those who were able to enter and leave the Mavis Bank were definitely influential people. Even from a distance he could see the iconic tree structure. The Mavis Bank's building was based on a large tree, and its branches were densely packed with universal coins that numbered in the tens of millions. These were real universal coins that would sometimes fall when the wind blew, and they belonged to whoever picked them up. This was why the land around the Mavis Bank was extremely expensive, even surpassing that of the palace. Every day, countless people would wander around the area, hoping to pick up some universal coins. The Mavis Bank had bought an area of 1,000 kilometers and planted exotic flowers and plants that couldn't be found in the outerverse. There was also a specialized army protecting the area, and there were even space-exploring powerhouses. From time to time, rare beasts would run past, and there was even a space station at the top of the tree that belonged to the Mavis family. In short, this place exuded an aura of extreme wealth. When he got off the aircraft, he was served by a beautiful young lady with a respectful attitude. She introduced him to the Mavis Bank and led him to the counter. Lu Yin looked around and saw the trunk of the large tree in the middle that led all the way to the top. There were dozens of counters around the trunk and it wasn't too busy. Zhou Xian was stunned. He had just picked up a universal coin from the ground. How could money be picked up so casually here? That's too generous. The service at the counter was completely automated, and the beautiful girl from before was standing not too far away with drinks and all sorts of other things waiting for Lu Yin to order. Lu Yin first looked through the crystal cards that the courtiers had given him, and found that there was only a little over 1 million in total. When converted to the Great Yu Empire's Yushan currency, that was about 10 million. It wasn't a small amount, but it wasn't a lot either. As for the crystal card that Undying Yushan had given him, it wasn't much either, only 300,000. This meant that he had close to 1.5 million in total. After that, he converted the amount in the crystal cards from the Empire's bank into universal coins, which amounted to about 500,000. Lu Yin pursed his lips. They were too stingy. Generally speaking, a cube of star crystals could be exchanged for 1 million, and he didn't even have 2 cubes of star crystals on him. But then again, the courtiers didn't dare to have too much money in case the Empire found out. Star crystals were different. No one would be able to find out about them, and even if they did, they could crush the evidence and destroy it. What a loss, I only got this much after 3 days. Looks like they've spent all their money on star crystals. I should think of a way to get more, he muttered to himself. As they walked out of the Mavis Bank, Zhou Xian asked carefully, "Boss, where are we going next? Are we still going to blackmail them?" Lu Yin glared at him. "Don't spout nonsense, those are just greeting gifts." Zhou Xian smiled awkwardly. Lu Yin muttered to himself. It was time to stop for a while. Even if he went to the courtiers now, no one would open the door again. It was time to train his battle techniques. At that moment, a universal coin floated down from the sky and landed in Lu Yin's hand. The universal currency was made from a special material that had a unique pattern of the starry sky drawn on it using star crystals. It looked exquisite and soft to the touch, and he looked up at the enormous tree-shaped building with countless universal currency floating on its branches. His eyes burned with passion. If he robbed the Mavis Bank, who knew how much money he could get? Lu Yin suddenly thought of Lulu Mavis and wondered if she was here. When they returned to King Zishan's palace, Lu Yin told Bronson that he would be in seclusion for 5 days and that no one was to disturb him. Bronson heaved a sigh of relief. Yes, Your Highness. Boss, what about me? Zhou Xian asked, looking at Lu Yin expectantly. Lu Yin casually handed him an imperial bank card. Buy some furniture and do as you see fit. Don't train. Zhou Xian was puzzled as to why Lu Yin wouldn't allow him to train, but he didn't ask any questions. Lu Yin considered whether or not he should report Zhou Xian's innate gift to the Empire. If he did, Zhou Xian would be given a chance to reform his body, but at the same time he wouldn't belong to him. But if he didn't report it, was he going to raise him forever? He couldn't just stop him from training forever. At that moment, Lu Yin suddenly remembered that he had wasted 5 pips from the lottery. Zhou Xian also had an innate gift that he could have used, but he had forgotten about him. It was also his fault for focusing so much on Bai Shui that he had forgotten about the other 2 innate gifts. Currently, the universe divided innate gifts into 3 categories: natural innate gifts, biological innate gifts, and exotic innate gifts. Natural innate gifts, as the name implied, allowed one to control the power of nature, ice, fire, and other natural phenomena in the universe. It was rumored that someone had awakened a black hole innate gift and was invincible for a time. Biological innate gifts were related to living creatures. The universe was vast and countless life forms had been born. It was also rumored that someone had awakened a celestial phoenix innate gift that could set the universe on fire. Exotic innate gifts were all-encompassing, including eyes, ears, and even the human body's 5 senses. There was also Lu Yin's own dai and so on. In short, all inexplicable innate gifts were listed here. Zhou Xian's innate gift was one of the exotic innate gifts. It was hard to say which of the 3 innate gifts was stronger, but any one of them could be used to dominate a region. This was also why the Universe Youth Council was willing to allow cultivators with innate gifts to join them. Innate gifts were 1 in a million and their potential was enormous. Lu Yin had originally planned to sell Zhou Xian to a powerful organization, but he felt that it would be too much of a loss. He had brought Zhou Xian all the way to the Great Yu Empire, and he was unwilling to let go of a cultivator with innate gifts. There were many ways to get money, but cultivators with innate gifts were different. Once Zhou Xian interacted more with the outside world, he would understand the importance of cultivators with innate gifts. As he thought about it, Lu Yin sent a message to Undying Yushan, informing him of Zhou Xian's situation. It didn't take long for news to arrive that Undying Yushan had agreed to allow Zhou Xian to remodel his body and join Yu Academy. At the same time, the 7th Imperial Squadron had also expressed their desire for Zhou Xian to join. Lu Yin muttered to himself. Bronson had introduced the 7th Imperial Squadron to him before. The captain was named Batson, and his weapon was an ancient flintlock. Was he interested in Zhou Xian's innate gift? Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 85. Boss, someone wants to take me away. Zhou Xian suddenly called out. Lu Yin replied, I've already told the Empire about your situation. Remodel your body like Zhang Dingtian and the rest. How far you can go in the future is up to you. Outside King Zishan's palace, Zhou Xian carefully swallowed and spoke to his gadget. Boss, remodel my body? I wouldn't dare. He would never forget Zhang Dingtian's pain. Lu Yin laughed. Well, it's your fault for absorbing energy crystals before meeting me, but you wouldn't have been able to awaken your innate gift otherwise. Alright, that's all for now. Work hard and your future achievements might not be inferior to Zhang Dingtian and the rest. He then hung up. Everyone from Earth now had their own homes and the future was up to them. Lu Yin himself had to become stronger as soon as possible. Astral 10 would descend at any time, and it would be too difficult for him to join with his current strength. King Zishan's palace had both a training room and a large training ground, but Lu Yin was the only one in it. There was a gravity room in the training ground, and Lu Yin habitually adjusted the gravity to 40 times normal. He crushed a cube of star crystals and began training the Day-Night Punch and Sky Beast Claw. Only by using star energy would he be able to achieve better results. Most people didn't have that luxury, but for Lu Yin this wasn't a problem at all. He didn't leave King Zishan's palace for 7 days straight, and many guessed that he had been reprimanded by His Majesty. 7 days later, Zhang Dingtian arrived at the second ring outside of Xinyu Star at the 13 Imperial Squadron's encampment. He looked up and saw the word 5 in front of him. This was the 5th Squadron. His identity was verified and he was brought to the 5th Squadron's encampment. He felt the surging power all around him, each of which could easily crush him. His gaze was resolute. The 13 Imperial Squadrons were the most powerful organization in the Great Yu Empire. Countless powerhouses were gathered here, and the official members of the 13 squadrons were all melders at the very least. Every squadron had several space-exploring powerhouses, and the captains were the cruisers who represented the Empire's most powerful forces. The captain of the 5th Squadron, Xianxia, was an absolute powerhouse who had followed Undying Yushan into the Innerverse. He was also the head of the Hua family and Hua Xiaoling's father. Zhang Dingtian was brought to the bottom of the gigantic volcano. With a deafening roar, lava blossomed in the air like fireworks before crashing to the ground and melting it. Zhang Dingtian didn't move. He watched as the lava came crashing down on him. If it hit him, he would be melted into ashes. Just as the magma was about to touch him, it suddenly disappeared. The surrounding high temperature rapidly decreased, as if it was being absorbed by an even more terrifying force. "You're from Earth." A huge sound wave accompanied by high temperature descended. Zhang Dingtian was being suppressed and his skin was being burned, but there was no fear in his eyes. "Yes, I'm from Earth." "Why did you walk out?" "Become stronger," Zhang Dingtian said firmly. "You will die." "Weakness is even more lamentable than death," roared Zhang Dingtian as he felt the pressure. His legs couldn't take it anymore and his clothes began to burn. "From now on you will be a member of the 5th Squadron. You will belong to me, Xianxia." Zhang Dingtian couldn't take it anymore and he spat out a mouthful of blood before collapsing to the ground. Within the volcano, a middle-aged man opened his eyes and looked at Zhang Dingtian. His fiery red hair was hotter than magma, and he was one of the captains that Lu Yin had seen at the imperial court. Compared to his ordinary appearance at the court, this man was the real Xianxia, a man hotter than magma. Bai Shui was brought to the 6th Squadron's encampment in the second ring. The 6th Squadron was completely different from the 5th. Most of its members were women, and the environment was beautiful with all sorts of pink trees and fragrant flowers. Bai Shui hadn't expected the 6th Squadron to be like this, and she looked around in surprise. Not long after, Peach came out with a tall woman. The woman was several meters away from Peach. "You're Bai Shui, King Zishan's friend?" Peach hovered 10 meters away from Bai Shui and looked at her curiously. Bai Shui bowed, "Yes." Peach nodded in satisfaction. "You're beautiful." "Good, you're a member of the 6th Squadron from now on. Remember, if anyone dares to bully you, tell them my name, Great Peach." Bai Shui was confused. This was the captain of the 6th Squadron? A lowly? It can't be. She felt like she'd been caught in a trap. "What, you don't want to?" Peach's dissatisfied voice came from behind Bai Shui. Bai Shui's eyes narrowed and she turned around to look at the previous position. Peach was still there, but there was another one behind her. Was this speed? Why wasn't the afterimage disappearing? Peach smiled slyly. "See, even space couldn't react to my speed. It's only now that I'm gone." Bai Shui stared blankly at the previous position, where Peach's afterimage had slowly disappeared. She didn't understand, but she knew that it was terrifying. "Greetings, Captain." Peach was pleased. Even further away at the 11th Squad's base, a strange scene was taking place. Their leader, the blind monk, and Saruzin were sitting opposite each other. Neither of them said a word. They just stared at each other in silence. Quite a few people stole glances at them, feeling like they'd seen a ghost. The two's appearances were more frightening than the other, especially Saruzin. He'd followed the blind monk for many years, but this was the first time he'd seen someone whose appearance completely outshined the blind monk's. That withered arm was just too awesome. How many years did it take to hold it up? Zhou Xian was still in the second ring where the 7th team was stationed. Zhou Xian was trembling with fear as he looked around. It was too scary. "Boss, I don't want to stay here." 7 days later, Lu Yin left King Zishan's palace. Training required a balance between work and rest, and it was time to go out for a walk. He found that training in the gravity room didn't have much of an effect on his battle techniques, especially the day-night fist. It was a technique that had been passed down for an entire race, and it required more than just training. It was more like understanding alternating day and night. There was a bar not far from King Zishan's palace. It wasn't large, but it was exquisite. Lu Yin walked in, hearing cheers and shouts as young men and women sang and danced to their heart's content. He didn't take more than a few steps before leaving. He didn't like the noisy atmosphere. Lu Yin wasn't sure where to go when a man approached him and bowed. "Your Highness, our master invites you for a drink." Lu Yin followed the man's gaze and saw the second prince, Duke Yushan, sitting at a table in an open-air tavern a few kilometers away, raising his glass to him. Lu Yin was surprised. What a coincidence, sure. The open-air tavern was much simpler than the bar and the wind was chilly. Duke Yushan drank alone as he ate. No one would have dared to believe that the second prince of the empire would be in such a place. "Brother, you're in such a good mood," Lu Yin greeted, sitting across from Duke Yushan and pouring himself a glass of wine. Duke Yushan smiled. "I didn't expect to meet you here. Don't you like bars?" Lu Yin shook his head. "It's too noisy, this place is much more comfortable. You can cook wine in the cold wind and have 100 different dishes." "I was afraid you wouldn't like it. The owner of this tavern was smuggled in from a barbarian planet and doesn't have much skill, but he's great at cooking wine. You should try it," Duke Yushan toasted Lu Yin. He took a sip and pursed his lips. To be honest, he didn't know much about wine, but this cup of wine wasn't spicy or dry at all. It felt pretty good, as if it stimulated his appetite. Even though it was warm, there was a cooling sensation that went straight to his brain. "Good wine." Duke Yushan smiled and filled Lu Yin's glass again. "As long as you don't mind." "Why are you in such a good mood to drink here?" Lu Yin asked. Duke Yushan shook his head. "Tired." Lu Yin was surprised, but he didn't say anything. Duke Yushan took another sip. "Fighting for the throne is too tiring." Lu Yin coughed, almost spitting out the wine as he looked at Duke Yushan in shock. "That was too direct." Duke Yushan laughed. "What, is this the first time you've heard of it?" Lu Yin laughed. "Yes, it is. Brother, you're so forthright." The corner of Duke Yushan's mouth rose. "Not just to you, I've said it to many people, even to father." Lu Yin was surprised. Was the fight for the throne so straightforward? He had stayed on Earth for more than a year and understood some of its history. The struggle for the throne had always been cruel and unpredictable, but he had never met anyone who was as direct as Duke Yushan. The Great Yu Empire is huge, with the royal family, the 13 squadrons, Yu Academy, the guards, and so on. Everyone has their eyes on the throne and us. There are 4 people who are qualified to fight for the throne, with eldest brother being the closest, but there are always people who don't want him to take the throne. So many people support me, like Sicker. Similarly, there are people who support fifth sister, but her ambition isn't in the Great Yu Empire. For people, who's the last one? Lu Yin was curious. He only knew of Crown Prince Doran Yushan, but Duke Yushan and 5th Princess Wendy Yushan. Duke Yushan looked at Lu Yin. "You." Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 86. Me. Lu Yin's heart trembled at Duke's words. "Me?" Duke nodded. "That's right, the 4th one is you. You have the right to become the emperor of the Great Yu Empire." Lu Yin blinked. "Stop joking, royal brother. I'm just an idle prince, not a member of the Yushan family. How could I have the right? Please don't speak nonsense." Duke smiled at Lu Yin. "I'm not speaking nonsense. Do you know what my father said to the undying Zishan before the undying duo ventured into the Innerverse?" He paused. "If we don't die this time, we'll split the empire equally. The Great Yu Empire belongs to both the Yushan family and the Zishan family." Lu Yin narrowed his eyes and met Duke's gaze. He smiled and picked up some food. "It's not bad." Duke Yushan retracted his gaze. "Eat more if it's delicious." "The servants are insensible, I apologize on their behalf." Lu Yin knew he was talking about Sicker, but he didn't mind. "Royal brother, when will Astral 10 descend? Do you have any definite news?" Duke shook his head. "I don't. There's only one person in the Great Yu Empire who knows, and that's 5th sister, your fiancée in name." Lu Yin rolled his eyes. He knew about Wendy Yushan, but fiancée? She wouldn't even look him in the eye. She didn't even place the Great Yu Empire in her eyes. Duke threw a cosmic ring on the table and stood up. "As your royal brother, this is a greeting gift. I hope you don't mind, I'll take my leave." Lu Yin's eyes lit up. This was good stuff. He trusted that Duke wouldn't be lacking. Duque smiled and was about to leave when he suddenly said, "Rumor has it that the Zishan family has a treasure trove. Why don't you take a look, royal brother? You might find something unexpected." Lu Yin held the cosmic ring in one hand, his eyes twinkling. Treasure trove? What did Duque mean? Did he want him to find it? What a joke. Undying Yushan hadn't mentioned a single word about the treasure, and it was obvious that he didn't want anyone else to get their hands on it. If Lu Yin went to look for it, wouldn't that just be courting death? Undying Yushan was trying to trick Lu Yin into thinking that he was greedy for money. As he ate, Lu Yin glanced at his cosmic ring and his eyes lit up. There was a ring armor inside. Duke had to be at least a melder's armor. It was good stuff and he was quite generous with it, but it was a little too shady. However, he didn't expect the Zishan family to have the right to inherit the throne. Did Sikr suppress him because of this? Impossible. Even if he was qualified, it did not mean that he would succeed. How could he compete with the crown prince and the second prince? They had been operating in the empire for hundreds of years and no one would take him seriously. So why did Sikr keep targeting him? Was it because of the Zishan clan? Duke apologized to him on behalf of Sikr. It was obvious that Sikr had acted on his own, or Duke wasn't the only one behind Sikr. Bronson, Lu Yin said. A figure walked out of the void behind him. It was Bronson. Your Highness. Have you heard of the Zishan clan's treasure? Bronson lowered his voice. I've heard of it, but it was hundreds of years ago. No one has mentioned it in recent years. Do you know anything about Sikr? Does he have any grudges with the Zishan clan? Lu Yin asked again. Bronson shook his head. No. Lu Yin muttered to himself. The Great Yu Empire's waters were deep, especially with Undying Yushan's old age. There were rumors that his old injuries had relapsed and he didn't have much longer to live. How would this battle for the throne end? However, this had nothing to do with Lu Yin for now. He might be in the Astral Combat Academy when the time came. After sitting for a while, Lu Yin left the tavern and returned to King Zishan's palace. There were many books in the palace, but there were no battle techniques. The Zishan clan must have taken them away. Lu Yin focused on finding books on breaking through to the Melder realm. Breaking through to the Melder realm was a turning point for cultivators. A person's future could be determined by their Melder realm. There were many books on this topic, but Lu Yin didn't understand what it meant. All he knew was that the path to becoming stronger was through realms and battle techniques. What else was there? Bronson, have you been to the Innerverse? Lu Yin asked. Bronson shook his head. No. The Innerverse was far stronger than the Outerverse. He had been there before, but he had always been stuck in one place. He didn't know much about the Innerverse, much less about the Melder realm. Should he ask Undying Yushan? Lu Yin shook his head. The Emperor might have taken care of him a little, but he wouldn't have allowed Lu Yin to look for him for everything. Crown Prince Doran Yushan seemed gentle, but he was just as scheming as Duke Yushan. Who else could it be? It was best not to contact her. Her value would decrease if he did. Are you thinking about how to break through to the Melder realm, Your Highness? Bronson asked, rarely taking the initiative to speak. Lu Yin shook his head. Let nature take its course. I'm thinking about how to become a Melder. Bronson muttered. In the Great Yu Empire, powerhouses rely on battle techniques. However, I've heard that there's an extremely powerful force called Battle Force in the Innerverse. Lu Yin's eyes lit up. He had heard of Battle Force before. Those who loved to fight had to have integrity. Battle Force originated from a person's heart, and it originated from the very foundation of the human body. It could be used to attack, defend, break through limits, crush the heavens and tear apart the heavens. It was an incomprehensible force that anyone could possess, but not everyone could activate. Lu Yin had heard of it several times in the Innerverse, but unfortunately, there was no way to cultivate Battle Force in the Outerverse. It was a secret even in the Innerverse and was even more secretive than Formcast models. Bronson's ability to hear about Battle Force was clearly related to his status, but that was all. He knew nothing about Battle Force. Lu Yin looked up at the sky and the 3 rings of land. His eyes flashed. How could he have forgotten about the Sky Beast Claw? Learning the first 20 forms of the Sky Beast Claw required the approval of the 5 Hull Masters. Thinking about it, Lu Yin took out his gadget to contact Jerlin and ask for her help in getting Jerbok to let him learn the Sky Beast Claw, but then he stopped himself. Given Jerlin's personality, it would be good enough if she didn't cause trouble for him. Helpless, he could only take the initiative to request the 5 hallmasters to learn the first 20 forms of the Sky Beast Claw as a member of Yu Academy. Tianming was the first to agree. He had agreed back in the formcast pool. He was quite easy to talk to. The second to agree was Luo Qing. The third to agree was Huozhong. Huozhong was from the Huo family, and Lu Yin hadn't expected him to agree. He had assumed that the Huo family would treat him with hostility because of Huo Shaoling. It was a pity that Zhirbak and Schütz didn't agree, but that was to be expected. He was just trying his luck, and it would be good enough if 3 of them agreed. The problem was how to get the other 2 to agree. It was at this time that Lu Yin received a notification that Zhirbak wanted to meet him. Zhirbak wanted to meet him? Lu Yin was surprised. Zhirlan must have told on him, or else Zhirbak wouldn't want to meet him. That's fine, I was just worrying about how to get him to agree. I'll know what he's thinking. Lu Yin didn't waste any time and headed to the first ring in the middle of the night. Cultivators didn't know the difference between day and night, and it was normal for them to not sleep for several days straight. Zhirbak's hall was rather far from the formcast pool, and it took him a full 9 hours to reach it from King Zishan's palace. The sky was already bright, and that was with the speed of the latest aircraft. It would take a normal person a few days to get there. There was a large lake in the first ring that could be considered an ocean. It was a deep blue color that could be seen even from Xenu star, far larger than Earth. At the center of the ocean was Zhirbak's hall. Huge towers were stacked on top of each other, and there were people flying over from time to time. Creatures roamed the sea and occasionally attacked the towers, but they were instantly annihilated. There were space-exploring powerhouses overseeing this place. Lu Yin sat in his aircraft and flew straight to the tower, looking down to see Yu Academy students hunting creatures on the surface of the sea. At the top of the tower, within a spacious stone house, a youth opened his eyes and looked outside with a grin. Bronson was stopped outside the tower, but Lu Yin was a member of Yu Academy and could enter. The tower was extremely tall, piercing through the clouds. There were many Yu Academy students coming and going, and all of them looked at Lu Yin curiously. Yu Academy was a place where the elites of the great Yu Empire's younger generation gathered. Every one of its members wasn't simple, and they would all be competitors in the future. Lu Yin walked to the center of the tower and looked up. The stone stairs spiraled upwards, and one could only climb them and not fly. That was the rule. It was time to ask for a reward. Thank you for your support, brothers. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 87. Just as Lu Yin was about to climb, a man walked out and blocked his path, sizing him up curiously. Brother, which floor do you want to go to? Which floor is Zhirbak on? Lu Yin asked. Everyone was startled and looked at Lu Yin in astonishment. You're looking for the Hall Master? He's the one looking for me, Lu Yin said indifferently. Everyone looked at Lu Yin inquisitively, and a shorter man glared at him from the crowd. He was one of the elites from Yu Academy who had gone to Earth for the trial and had been robbed by Lu Yin. He had a deep impression of Lu Yin and was one of the few who knew of his identity. He wanted to cause trouble for Lu Yin, but decided against it when faced with Lu Yin's identity as King Zishan. The Hall Master is on the top floor, the man who blocked Lu Yin said. Thank you, Lu Yin replied before climbing up. Every few meters there was a huge space. The higher he went, the fewer people there were, and no one was stopping him. By the time he saw the clouds outside, he was already very close to the top, but there was no one here. At the top of the tower, Zhirbak stood by a stone window as a strong wind blew past. Lu Yin leapt up to the top floor and saw a youth standing not too far away. His back was straight and he exuded a fierce aura. This was Zhirbak, one of the top powerhouses of the great Yu Empire's younger generation, one of the Hall Masters of Yu Academy, and a freak in the mouths of countless students. Lu Yin sized up Zhirbak, who suddenly turned around and glared at him like an arrow piercing through the void, causing Lu Yin to feel a chill down his spine. This person looks very similar to Zhirlan, so he must be her brother, Lu Yin thought to himself. They were both Hall Masters of Yu Academy, but Tianming was gentle and polite while Zhirbak had a heroic aura. His entire being was like an arrow, full of aggression. Thank you for taking care of my sister during the trial, Zhirbak said, his gaze fixed on Lu Yin. Lu Yin frowned and stared back without backing down. It's the law of the jungle. Zherbok grinned. That's right. Since you know that, why did you help her? Lu Yin was stunned. Help her? Didn't he snatch her away? Although she didn't succeed in Earth's trial, Zherlin is far ahead in terms of individual results. She's even surpassed Eddie. I don't believe it. I know her. She can't get that kind of result with her strength. You're the one who helped her. You kidnapped dozens of students. That result is enough for her to be ahead of others. Lu Yin raised an eyebrow. Zherlin didn't seem to have told Zherbok that he had robbed her, which made sense. Given her personality, there was no way she would tell Zherbok about it. Although Zherbok had a lot of authority in U Academy, it was limited to U Academy. He didn't have the authority to interfere with the trials, so he wouldn't have known about the details of the trials or that Lu Yin had robbed her. Is that why you don't want me to learn the first 20 forms of the Sky Beast Claw? Zherbok's gaze swept outside the tower. I just wanted to see you. Although you're King Zishan, you participated in the trials as a native. A mere native defeated dozens of students, including the elites of U Academy, including Roz. I'm very curious about you. He stared at Lu Yin, his eyes full of battle intent. I want to experience your strength even more. Rumor has it that you can learn the Sky Beast Claw in actual combat, but I don't believe it. Lu Yin smiled. Let's give it a try then. Zherbok grunted and suppressed his star energy to the Sentinel realm. Be careful, I won't hold back once we're in battle mode. Me too, Lu Yin replied, and the two charged at each other at the same time. Boom. Their fists collided, sending shockwaves in all directions as they retreated at the same time before charging at each other again. Zherbok didn't hold back as he raised his hand and unleashed a Sky Beast Claw that was far stronger than Tissan's. This was Zherbok. Even as a sentinel, he could use battle techniques that surpassed a Melder's. Lu Yin's eyes narrowed as he stopped abruptly, his gaze fixed on Zherbok's Sky Beast Claw. 5 stars appeared faintly around his body, forming a unique defensive force field. When Zherbok's claw reached into the cosmic force field, the distance between them became incomparably distant, to the point where Lu Yin could clearly see every move of the Sky Beast Claw. 1, 2, 3, all the way to the 15th form. Zherbok's Sky Beast Claw contained 15 variations, and its power was terrifying. The void roared and shook the air, seemingly freezing everything around them. Lu Yin's eyes narrowed as he dodged at an incredible angle. The Sky Beast Claw covered 100 meters, but Lu Yin still managed to evade it and hit the ground, leaving a huge imprint. Zherbok stared at Lu Yin in shock. You actually dodged it good. Lu Yin's eyes narrowed. He had just learned 9 variations, but that wasn't enough. Zherbok used the same Sky Beast Claw in a futile attempt to defeat Lu Yin. Unfortunately, Lu Yin could see that the Sky Beast Claw wasn't flawless and every attack was dodged. It wasn't until Zherbok used the Sky Beast Claw for the 5th time that Lu Yin's eyes lit up. He had succeeded. The next moment, Lu Yin raised his hand and turned it into a claw, Sky Beast Claw. Zherbok was shocked, but he also used the same technique. There was a loud rumble that attracted the attention of many below the tower. Lu Yin and Zherbok retreated at the same time, leaving deep marks on the ground. When the dust settled, Zherbok's shocked expression was revealed. You can actually imitate, learn, the Sky Beast Claw. You've only seen it 5 times and you're already able to use the 15th form. Zherbok was a Melder, and even if he suppressed his realm, his body was still as strong as a Melder's. Lu Yin would be at a disadvantage if he fought him head-on. I never thought that there would be a genius like you. The Sky Beast Claw is engraved on the stone wall, and even the elites of U Academy would take a long time to learn it. Some people can't even learn the 15th form in their entire lives, but you managed to do it in such a short time. I'm impressed, Zherbok praised. Lu Yin didn't see any jealousy in Zherbok's eyes, and his impression of him improved significantly. It just so happens that this battle technique suits me. Zherbok nodded and sighed. That's right, it's easy to learn a battle technique that suits you. Do you still want to fight? Lu Yin asked. Zherbok's lips curled up. The Sky Beast Claw isn't my forte, and since I said I'd fight you, I won't let it end like this. Be careful, I'll use a battle technique that suits me, so don't blame me if you die. Lu Yin's gaze turned cold. Zherbok was a Hall Master and a Peak Melder, so his battle techniques were definitely terrifying. Come. Zherbok grinned. and a strange fruit appeared in his hand with a lightning pattern on it. This fruit was similar to a natural energy crystal and could provide electricity. As he crushed the fruit, lightning flashed wildly and high temperatures scorched the ground. It even blasted outside through the stone window, causing quite a few people to be shocked. The hall master is fighting. Who is he fighting? Is it that person who just went up? Impossible, he's only a sentinel. Lu Yin felt the violent lightning and subconsciously retreated. This scene reminded him of Zhou armor, but it was far more terrifying. He couldn't wait any longer, so he took the initiative to attack. His gaze turned cold as he raised his hand and blasted out with Space Render Palm. Zhou snorted and waved his hand, causing lightning to explode and tear apart the shockwaves of Space Render Palm before shooting towards Lu Yin like an arrow. Lu Yin hurriedly dodged, but the wall behind him was pierced through and the scorching shockwaves pushed him away. His body felt numb from the power of the lightning. "This is my battle technique, the Thunderbolt Arrow. Let me see your strength," Zhou growled, stepping forward with one foot and transforming the lightning into an arrow that he aimed at Lu Yin. In that instant, Lu Yin felt his scalp go numb. It wasn't just lightning that had appeared in his eyes, there was also an unfathomable sharpness to it. The entire world had turned into a sea of lightning filled with enemies. Below the tower, Bronson's gaze turned solemn as he stared at the sky. In Yu Academy, he couldn't interfere in a battle as long as it wasn't intentional. He just hoped that the Zishan king wouldn't die. Even if he suppressed his realm, he still wasn't a match for an ordinary melder. Lu Yin stared at the sharpness amidst the endless lightning. Zhou was even more threatening than Qingyu had been. Qingyu's injuries had suppressed him to the Sentinel realm, and he couldn't use many battle techniques. Zhou, on the other hand, had no restrictions and could display his full strength as a sentinel. Lu Yin knew that he couldn't dodge the attack, so he raised his hand and activated the 5 stars in his palm. He used the cosmic palm and the stars appeared in his palm. Boom. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 88. The shockwave shattered the walls and blew away the clouds, sweeping out in all directions. At the top of the tower, Lu Yin had finally managed to block Zhou all-out attack. Not only that, but the explosion of the 5th star had even suppressed Zhou Thunderbolt Arrow, dispersing all of the lightning and nullifying Zhou battle technique. Zhou himself wasn't injured, but his technique had been broken and he had lost. Lu Yin retracted his hand, a black mark appearing on his palm. The power of the lightning had scorched his palm, but it wasn't too serious. "You win," Zhou said. Lu Yin took a deep breath. "It's a draw, I'm injured." Zhou laughed. "I used an external force to display my battle technique, so that's cheating. I believe you didn't use your full strength either. I'm not a sore loser, a win is a win." Lu Yin didn't argue. He really hadn't used his full strength. At the very least, he hadn't used Bai Shui's innate gift. With her innate gift and serious palm, he could have been even stronger. Although suppressing your realm isn't very satisfying, it's still not bad. With your strength, you're definitely in the top 10 of Yu Academy, Zhou said cheerfully. Lu Yin was surprised. Yu Academy has more than 10 melders, right? Zhou sneered. Melders? So what, No more than 10 people in Yu Academy can block that arrow, so you're definitely in the top 10. He suddenly thought of Tyson, who had challenged him in the formcast pool. That person was also a melder, but he had been defeated by Lu Yin's cosmic palm. There was also Munoer. With Lu Yin's current strength, he could definitely defeat a melder. After all, Lu Yin could easily defeat a melder. Were melders weak? No, they were strong, but the melders of the Great Yu Empire were weak. Zhou was strong in Yu Academy, but he was far from being strong in the Innerverse. This was the difference between the Outerverse and the Innerverse. Lu Yin wasn't in a hurry to break through to the Melder realm. He wanted to learn more about the Melder realm. He didn't want to end up like Munoer. At that moment, Lu Yin saw that Zhou had agreed to his request. "Thank you," Lu Yin said. "There's only Schütz left. How do you plan to get him to agree?" Zhou asked. Lu Yin hadn't expected this. He had heard of Schütz before, and he was the indisputable strongest person of the Great Yu Empire's younger generation. He was also the #1 expert of Yu Academy, and he easily surpassed Tianming and Zhou. He was also a former member of the Great Yu Empire's Youth Council. With so many halos around him, even an ordinary person would be praised to the peak. Zhou chuckled. I'll be a good person to the end and help you. However, you've already learned 15 moves. 5 more moves won't make much of a difference, but you'll have to pay a huge price. Are you sure? Lu Yin was curious. That depends on the price. Gulba was shocked. I thought you would do it without hesitation. Lu Yin shrugged. Just like you said, there's not much of a difference between having 5 more or less styles. If the effort isn't proportional to the benefits, then there's no need for it. Zhou sized Lu Yin up. To be honest, I've met many people who aren't afraid of death in the face of powerful battle techniques, especially the elites of Yu Academy. They'll fight to the death with anyone who tries to stop them. It's rare to meet someone as realistic as you. Lu Yin smiled. If he could learn all of the Sky Beast Claw's techniques, he would be willing to pay a huge price, but there was no need for just 20 forms. He didn't rely on the Sky Beast Claw to fight, and his main focus was on the serious palm. Actually, he wanted Zhou to show him the 20 forms of the Sky Beast Claw, but he knew that this request was a bit too much. No one liked others to secretly learn their combat skills, even if it was a common combat skill, just like no one liked others to pry into their privacy. Zhou already knew that Lu Yin could learn the Sky Beast Claw in battle, so there was no way he would use it against him. Zhou activated his gadget and a screen popped up. A youth with a cold gaze and a red war blade on his back appeared on the screen. His upper body was naked and his body was covered in scars. This person was Schutz. Compared to Zhou, Schutz looked very ordinary, but this person had firmly suppressed countless youths in the Great Yu Empire and become the strongest powerhouse. What is it? Schutz's voice was hoarse and indifferent. I lost, Zhou replied. Schutz's eyes flashed. Who did you lose to? Lu Yin, that King Zishan, Zhou replied. He's a sentinel, Schutz muttered to himself. I lost to him as a sentinel and he learned all 15 forms of the Sky Beast Claw perfectly, Zhou said. Schutz fell silent. The way I see it, he's already invincible among sentinels. There's no one in Yu Academy who can match him anyway, and his overall strength is enough to rank him in the top 10. Once he breaks through to the Melder realm, he might even become a threat to the 5 Hall Masters. What do you think? Schutz looked at Zhou. Where is he? He just left. Why do you want to see him? I want to fight him. He's a sentinel. He might not have the time. You know, he's King Zishan, not an ordinary student of Yu Academy. He doesn't belong to any hall. Schutz's gaze turned sharp. Tell him that I can agree to let him learn the first 20 forms of the Sky Beast Claw, as long as he dares to accept the challenge. Zhou thought about it. All right, I'll look for him. Without another word, Schutz turned off the screen. Zhou turned to Lu Yin with a smile. Done. How about it? Do you dare to pay the price? Lu Yin's lips curled up, excitement flashing through his eyes. It would be my honor to fight the strongest in the Empire. Zhou was about to say something when their gadgets buzzed at the same time. This was an important notification that couldn't be turned off, just like the one from Astral 10. Lu Yin and Zhou looked at their gadgets at the same time, and after a while they looked up and stared at each other in shock. The 5th princess of the Empire, Wendy Yushan, had joined the Outerverse Youth Council and become a member of the Great Yu Empire's Youth Council. Something big is about to happen, Zhou said in a low voice. At the same time, countless people in the Empire received the news that Wendy Yushan had joined the Outerverse Youth Council and was now in charge of the Empire's Youth Council. Most people cheered as someone from the Empire finally had a say in the Outerverse. But at the same time many sighed. These were people who understood Wendy Yushan, including the Undying Yushan. In the palace, the Undying Yushan sighed and smiled bitterly. This is going to be troublesome. In the Crown Prince's residence, Doran Yushan stared blankly at the screen before sighing. With her temperament, is there anyone in the Empire who can catch her eye? Duque laughed. This is interesting. Looks like the Empire is going to be lively. Many people sighed. On the top floor of the first ring tower, Lu Yin was puzzled. What's with that expression? Isn't it a good thing that Wendy Yushan has joined the Outerverse Youth Council? She's even in charge of the Empire's Youth Council. Zhou smiled bitterly. Do you know anything about the 5th princess? Lu Yin shook his head. Not at all. He'd only heard that this woman was doing well in the Immerse and had her sights set on the top of her head. Even the Great Yu Empire was beneath her. Princess Wendy she. Before Zhou could finish, another notification came: the Great Yu Empire lacks talents. The council has temporarily suspended recruitment and will be taken over by members of the Outerverse Youth Council. They will soon arrive at Xinyu Star. Lu Yin stared blankly at the notification. What did this mean? This is Princess Wendy. No one in the Empire's younger generation is worthy of her attention, including us 5 Hall Masters. In her eyes, we don't even have the right to enter the Youth Council. That's why there's no such thing as a Youth Council in the Empire, Zhou said helplessly. This was the first time Lu Yin had experienced Wendy Yushan's tyranny. She had decided everything and no one could go against her decision, not even the undying Yushan. He seemed to have a marriage contract with her, and when he thought about it he felt a chill run down his spine. She wouldn't break the contract by sending him a notice, would she? Even though he was an imposter, that would be too embarrassing. He hoped that she wouldn't. How strong is this woman? She doesn't even like you guys? Lu Yin asked. Zhou gaze was complicated. You should know that she's the second captain of the 13 Imperial Squadrons. Lu Yin nodded. He'd heard Bronson mention it before. She fought her way up, Zhou said in admiration. Lu Yin's expression changed. What? She fought her way up? Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 89. Zhou nodded with a look of reverence. How is it? Isn't it unbelievable? But it's the truth. The 13 Imperial Squadrons have a rule that as long as a member defeats the captain, they can replace him. She defeated the previous captain and became the new captain. That was the first thing she did when she came out of the Immerse. From then on, no one knows how strong she is because no one in the Empire is worth her time. Lu Yin was shocked and his heart was filled with a sense of absurdity. The captains of the 13 Imperial Squadrons were all cruisers, which meant that their power levels exceeded 50,000. How could that woman have reached that level? How was that possible? Zhou and the other Hall Masters were only melders, and there was a huge gap between them and a cruiser. No wonder that woman looked down on the Empire's younger generation. She was a genius who had stood out from the rest of the universe. Top 20 on the Astral Combat rankings. She's terrifying enough to sweep through Frostwave Weave, and even the older generation has to bow down before her. There aren't many in the Great Yu Empire who can beat her. She's enough to look down on us, Zhou sighed. At that moment the screen lit up again. It was Schutz. Zhou, postpone my battle with Lu Yin. I want to see how strong the members of the Outerverse Youth Council are. Zhou nodded. I want to try as well. If Princess Wendy likes him, he's definitely not weak. Adjust your condition. The Great Yu Empire can't be looked down upon. Schutz turned off the screen. Zhou looked at Lu Yin. Go back. Your battle with Schutz will have to wait for a while, at least until the Outerverse Youth Council members arrive. Lu Yin grunted and left, feeling a little conflicted. His fiancée was a little too strong. No matter how big of a commotion Wendy Yushan caused in the Great Yu Empire, it was still a good thing for the outside world. At the very least, she was the princess of the Great Yu Empire. Perhaps it was because of her sudden rise that the Hua family had suddenly rejected the marriage proposal from the Fireforge planet. Your Majesty Undying Yushan, the marriage between young Master Yen Feng of Fire's Melt planet and the eldest daughter of the Hua family was already set in stone. Now that the Hua family has suddenly gone back on their word, are they looking down on Fire's Melt planet? The courtiers were indifferent, but Crown Prince Doran Yushan spoke up. The Great Yu Empire and Fire's Melt planet have always been on good terms, so a marriage alliance is naturally best. However, this is the Hua family's decision, and the Empire cannot interfere. Yen Gang clenched his teeth. Your Highness, are you saying that the Empire won't care? Indeed, this is a family matter. The marriage between young Master Yen Feng and Hua Shaoling isn't decided by His Majesty, nor is it a matter of state relations. The outcome is up to both of you, Doran said with a faint smile. Yen Gang glared at the red-haired man standing below Doran Yushan. He was Hua Qingshan, captain of the 5th Imperial Squadron. Compared to the domineering aura he'd displayed during Zhang Dingtian's second trial, he looked more like an ordinary person now. Xianxia looked indifferent. I never agreed to marry little Ling to the Fire's Melt planet. Your young master was the one who said that. It had nothing to do with me. Yan Gang clenched his fists as he felt incredibly humiliated. The Fire's Melt planet had never suffered such humiliation before, but he could only endure it in the face of the Great Yu Empire. This was especially true now that Wendy Yushan had joined the Outerverse Youth Council. It would be unwise to make an enemy out of the Great Yu Empire. Yan Gang looked up at Undying Yushan and bowed respectfully. Your Majesty, since the Hua family has changed the marriage contract without permission, the Fire's Melt planet has nothing to say. I can only accept this humiliation on behalf of the young master. I will only accept the young master's apology. Undying Yushan wearily replied, Kid, don't be so impulsive. There's no humiliation, it's just that young people have different views on love. Yan Gang was helpless, but he suddenly looked at the man behind Xianxia. His eyes lit up and he respectfully asked again, Your Majesty, the Hua family has broken the agreement. The young master will become the laughingstock of the entire Frostwave Weave. May I choose another marriage for the young master? Everyone looked at Yan Gang in astonishment. A mere melder, the bodyguard of the Fire's Melt planet's young master, had such authority? He dared to make a decision for his master? Duke Yushan looked at Yan Gang. I heard that you and Yan Feng have known each other since childhood. In name you're master and servant, but you're actually brothers. It seems that the rumors are true. You actually dare to choose another marriage for him. Yan Gang was helpless. The entire Frostwave Weave and even Grand Top Weave knows that the Fire's Melt planet has proposed marriage to the Great Yu Empire. If it isn't completed, the Fire's Melt planet will become the laughingstock of the Outerverse. I believe that your Majesty doesn't want to see that happen. Who do you want to propose marriage to? Undying Yushan asked. Yan Gang bowed. Miss Jenny Anna. Everyone was shocked and the man behind Xianxia glanced at Yan Gang coldly. Oh. Yan Gang was stunned. Why not? Undying Yushan and the rest looked at the man as well. He was Rocky Anna, the captain of the 9th Squadron of the 13 Imperial Squadrons, and also Jenny Anna's uncle. Jenny has already been engaged to someone else. Yan Gang smiled. Captain Rocky, you must have remembered wrongly. Miss Jenny and I participated in Earth's trial and can be considered acquaintances. I've asked her before, but she hasn't been engaged to anyone. Rocky Anna's gaze was cold. That was before. My Anna family once had an engagement with the Zishan family. Everyone in the Great Yu Empire knows about this. You can ask around. Yan Gang couldn't help but look at Undying Yushan. Undying Yushan glanced at Rocky Anna and nodded. That's right. Yan Gang frowned. Your Majesty, from what I know, Miss Jenny doesn't want to marry King Zishan. They even have a grudge against each other. How can she make decisions about marriage? Rocky Anna retorted. Yan Gang was furious, but there was nothing he could do. If that's the case, then I understand. I will report this matter to the leader and the young master. The young master has just heard that Princess Wendy has joined the Outerverse Youth Council, and he's looking forward to it. He'll be participating in the selection soon, and he might have a chance to work with Princess Wendy in the future. We can discuss this matter then. Everyone was shocked when they heard this. Did Yan Feng, the young master of the Fire's Melt planet, have the qualifications to participate in the Outerverse Youth Council? They really didn't know, but if that was true, then it would be troublesome. Hold on. Everyone suddenly realized that the Fire's Melt planet's goal had always been Princess Wendy, right? Hua Xiaoling and Jenny Anna had both been a ruse to make the Great Yu Empire change its mind and reduce the difficulty of pursuing Princess Wendy. The Great Yu Empire had already rejected Hua Xiaoling and Jenny Anna's marriage to the Fire's Melt planet. Once Yan Feng successfully pursued Wendy Yushan, it would be difficult for the Great Yu Empire to reject him. The more they thought about it, the more likely it seemed. Many people looked at Undying Yushan, but he remained indifferent and didn't say anything. Yan Gang still had a sullen expression on his face. Xianxia and Rocky Anna looked at him coldly. They had been used and they would not let this matter rest. Alright, I'm tired. You may leave. Undying Yushan waved his hand tiredly and everyone left the palace. Tell King Zishan to come see me at the palace, Undying Yushan ordered. Not long after, Lu Yin appeared outside the palace in his flying vehicle. King Zishan's palace was too close to the palace, and when he arrived the courtiers had just reached the grand astral gate. Lu Yin bumped into them and Bronson stood 10 meters away from him. Jessica smiled at him politely. Many courtiers were unhappy with Lu Yin as they had all been bribed. There were also many courtiers who avoided him to avoid being targeted. Lu Yin waited for everyone to leave before slowly entering. King Zishan, a voice rang out beside Lu Yin's ear. Lu Yin turned around and saw Rocky Anna. "Hello, Captain Rocky." Rocky Anna's expression was indifferent. He had just announced the marriage between Jenny Anna and Lu Yin, and regardless of the reason it was a fact. This young man was now the Anna family's son-in-law. Be careful with your words and actions and don't trust anyone. If you have any problems you can ask the Anna family for help. With that he turned and left, his entire body cold. Lu Yin was stunned. What did he mean? "King Zishan, His Majesty is waiting for you," a palace maid reminded him. Lu Yin hurriedly followed her inside. "What? A marriage alliance with the Anna family?" Lu Yin exclaimed in shock. Undying Yushan smiled and nodded. Yes, this was an agreement between the Zishan family and the Anna family. Rocky Anna personally admitted it today in court. You should prepare yourself and find a good day to get married. You're not young anymore. Do? Lu Yin asked. Jenny Anna, of course, Undying Yushan replied. An image of an arrogant woman appeared in Lu Yin's mind, as well as the scene where she had been tied up by him and the scene where she had threatened Sigmund and the others after her final battle with Qingyu. That woman must hate him to death. He remembered how she had treated him on the spacecraft. Marry her? The rest of his life was over. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 90. Lu Yin looked troubled. Your Majesty, can we not get married? The Emperor looked at Lu Yin curiously. You have someone you like? Lu Yin subconsciously shook his head, but then immediately nodded. Yes. Undying Yushan laughed. Then forget about it. Rocky Anna suggested it himself. If you refuse, the Anna family will lose face and Fire's Melt planet will become a laughing stock. Lu Yin was helpless. Well, actually, I don't like Jenny Anna. Relationships can't last forever, especially for cultivators. They can live for hundreds of years and relationships can't last long. It's just two people living together, so don't think too much about it. Lu Yin was conflicted and was thinking about how to refuse when Undying Yushan suddenly thought of something. He leaned forward and stared at Lu Yin. Little Yin, tell me the truth. Do you have feelings for Wendy? Lu Yin blinked but didn't answer. Undying Yushan thought that he had guessed correctly and rubbed his aching head. I promised royal brother Zishan that the Yushan and Zishan families would have a marriage contract, and it had to be between the direct descendants. You and Wendy do have a marriage contract and I admit it. However, I cannot decide for her. If you want her, you have to fight for it yourself. I can only guarantee that I will not oppose it. Lu Yin lowered his head. Undying Yushan sighed. Little Yin, I'm not trying to discourage you, but Wendy is definitely powerful even in the Innerverse. You should have heard of the Astral Combat Rankings, which is a list of the geniuses of the entire universe compiled by the Astral Combat Academy. Wendy is in the top 20, which means that there are less than 20 people in the entire universe who can compare to her. Even I cannot underestimate her strength, and I can tell you that I have no intention of using her as a marriage contract to stabilize the Great Yu Empire. However, she has her sights set above her head and I cannot influence her. If you want her, you have to at least enter the top 50 of the Astral Combat Rankings. Lu Yin looked up and said firmly, I'm confident, Your Majesty. Undying Yushan laughed. It's good to be confident. Since that's the case, I will help you talk to the Anna family. However, I won't reject you but rather delay it for 3 years at most. If you can't win Wendy's heart in 3 years, you have to obediently marry Jenny. How about that? Lu Yin nodded and solemnly said, 3 years it is. I'm confident that Princess Wendy will see me in a new light. Undying Yushan nodded and watched Lu Yin leave. A whole new level of respect. Wendy is the successor of the Innerverse Myriad Swords Peak, and she wasn't nurtured by my Great Yu Empire. Otherwise she wouldn't be that strong. It's not just difficult for you to catch her eye, it's practically impossible. Whatever, 3 years should be enough for me to restrain myself. Lu Yin exhaled as he walked out of the palace's courtyard. Thankfully he had used Wendy Yushan to block the engagement. What a joke. He wasn't even the real King Zishan, and he might not even be in the Great Yu Empire in 3 years. Who cared about his marriage? As soon as Lu Yin left the palace, the news that he wanted to marry the 5th Princess Wendy Yushan spread, causing countless people to ridicule him. Wendy Yushan's strength was not something that the average person could comprehend. She was the captain of the 13 imperial squadrons and someone who had defeated a cruiser. She was also the successor of an enormous power in the Innerverse, and no one in the younger generation of the Great Yu Empire was worthy of her attention. Even Schutz, Durbach, and the others did not dare to even dream of seducing someone like her. However, there were rumors that Lu Yin wanted to obtain her, which was no different from a fool's dream. For a moment, this matter became the laughingstock of the entire capital star. Within the Anna family's study, family head Xianxia Anna slammed the table. A mere junior from the Fire's Melt planet dares to use my Anna family? I'll make him pay for this sooner or later. Rocky Anna sat down indifferently and said, Jenny seems to like Yen Feng a lot. So what if she likes him? The Fire's Melt planet's environment isn't suitable for my Anna family to survive in. Besides, once we're connected to the Fire's Melt planet through marriage, how will my Anna family survive in the Great Yu Empire? At that moment, Rocky Anna received a message from his gadget. He glanced at it and frowned, displeasure flashing through his eyes. What's wrong? Xianxia Anna asked. Rocky Anna replied, King Zishan wants to marry Princess Wendy. Xianxia Anna sneered. He doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Even Schutz and the others don't have the guts to say such a thing, let alone him? What does he look down on Jenny? Jenny was completely defeated by him during Earth's trial, Rocky Anna replied. Xianxia Anna grew angry at the mention of this. What a disappointment. She couldn't even beat a native. Pass down my orders, she can't leave the house until she becomes a melder. What about King Zishan? Rocky Anna asked. Xianxia Anna muttered to himself for a moment before answering, You've already acknowledged this marriage in court, so you can't go back on your word. The royal family and the Zishan family also have a marriage contract, so both sides are reasonable. No one will mock my Anna family over this matter. However, this King Zishan is a little too arrogant. He actually asked for a bribe a few days ago, so we should teach him a lesson. Not long after, Jenny Anna was dragged home from the bar. Tori smiled bitterly at her. I'm sorry, miss, but from today onwards, you can't leave the house until you become a melder. Jenny Anna glared at Tori. I heard uncle married me off to that bastard Lu Yin during the royal court. Is that right? And that bastard doesn't want to marry me, he wants to marry Princess Wendy. Tori shrugged helplessly, not knowing how to respond. Jenny was furious. That bastard dares to look down on me? He's just a lowly native. Jenny Anna will never marry someone like that. He's a robber, a despicable, shameless person. I'd rather die than marry him. I'm going to cultivate and become a melder as soon as possible so that I can return all the humiliation he's given me. Tori Anna sighed. Perhaps he should thank Lu Yin. Without him, Jenny would still be immersed in her worship of Yen Feng and wouldn't be cultivating. Tori Anna couldn't help but admire the youth who had dared to face them and threaten them. Not every native dared to raise conditions with the Empire, especially when the other party was a space-exploring powerhouse. Unfortunately, a person's talent was destined at birth. No matter how talented he was, his talent was limited to the Great Yu Empire. Princess Wendy was a publicly acknowledged genius in the universe, and even Yen Feng wasn't someone he could compare to. Lu Yin hadn't expected such a huge reaction to his marriage. Although most of them were mocking him, there were some who were sincerely looking forward to it. For example, there were some in the third ring who had paid close attention to Lu Yin even though they hadn't interacted with him. In the Empire's prison, Sigmund Mathers was restrained by a light prison. In front of him was a youth who looked at him in pain. It was his son, Wuxia Mathers. You want to marry Princess Wendy? That's too difficult, Sigmund sighed. Wuxia replied, if you really do marry her, it'll shock the entire Outerverse. Not just the Outerverse but the entire universe. Princess Wendy is ranked in the top 20 of the Astral Combat rankings and is the successor of Myriad Swords Peak. She's famous throughout the universe and her every move is being watched by countless people. When King Zishan was conferred the title, there were already people investigating him. The marriage agreement between the Zishan and Yushan families isn't a secret, and now that King Zishan is being so high-profile, countless people are probably talking about it. Father, what should we do? King Zishan saved your life, Wukai said. Sigmund glared at him. Don't say such things in the future. Go back and don't do anything. You're not allowed to interact with Roz and the others. Wukai nodded. In the depths of the dark universe, a beam of light shot out at high speed. It was a medium-sized spaceship that was silvery white in color, and its hull was engraved with patterns of wings and swords. Around it were 10 black figures which were the symbols of the Universe Youth Council. These 10 black figures represented the 10 arbiters. Inside the spaceship, dozens of people were trembling in fear as they stood there. In front of them was a burly man who was close to 3 meters tall. He was using a finger to guide his body upwards. Sweat dripped down his face, drenching a large area on the ground. The hard ground was even cracked by his finger, gradually spreading out. Not too far away, a number slowly flashed. It was the gravity value, which was currently displayed at 150. The burly man's gaze suddenly turned cold, and he bent his finger to easily flip himself up. A maid beside him immediately crushed a water crystal to wash the man's body. Are you saying that King Zishan of the Great Yu Empire wants to marry Counselor Wendy? The man asked casually as he wiped his body. Dozens of people lowered their heads. Yes, the news came from the Great Yu Empire and Undying Yushan didn't object. The burly man sneered. How audacious. A savage native wants to swallow the heavens. Lord Baser, these natives may be small, but they're disgusting. If this news reaches Lord Puyu's ears, the results won't be good. Someone stepped forward and whispered. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 91. Baser glanced at the man. You're right. What do you think we should do? Seal the news and think of a way to get rid of that native, the man suggested. Baser tossed the towel aside and approached the man. Well said. What else? Counselor Wendy doesn't care about a native's life. Not only do we have to kill him, but we also have to make it look like an accident that will make his name go down in history. We have to make Counselor Wendy hate her hometown, the man continued. Baser walked in front of the man and placed a hand on his shoulder. You're right, but have you thought about how nothing can escape Counselor Wendy's eyes? If she thinks that Lord Puyu ordered us to do this, how will Lord Puyu show his face? The man paled and tried to explain himself, but it was too late. Baser exerted more force, and the man who had been standing still was instantly reduced to a puddle of blood that dyed the ground red. The stench of blood filled the air. Everyone grew even more terrified and lowered their heads, not daring to move. At that moment, footsteps sounded as a young man slowly walked over. He was thin and pale. Don't be angry, Brother Baser. That native is a sentinel and so am I. Let me help you out. Deaths are common in sparring and I'm sure no one will blame me. Baser wiped his hands. Then I'll leave it to you, Ghostfire. A few days later, Lu Yin was studying the star chart in King Zishan's palace when Bronson transmitted, Your Highness, Captain Peach of the 6th Squadron of the 13 Imperial Squadrons is here to visit. Lu Yin looked up in surprise. Peach? Why is she here? He didn't think he had anything to do with this lowly, but she had glared at him the first time he had come to the capital. She wasn't here for revenge, was she? However, he didn't have time to think about it. As soon as he arrived at the front hall, he saw a little lowly walking around with an extremely beautiful woman. Oh, Lu Yin, you're here. Peach was pleasantly surprised and instantly appeared in front of him, blinking her large eyes as she sized him up. Lu Yin stepped forward. Hello, Captain Peach. She quickly retreated. Don't come close. Lu Yin was puzzled and looked at himself. What's wrong? Bai Shui explained. Captain doesn't like to stand with people who are taller than her. Lu Yin stared blankly at Peach. The little girl was only 1.2 meters tall and it would be difficult to find someone shorter than her. No wonder Bai Shui was several meters away from her. King Zishan's residence is so big and tall. I like it, Peach said as she looked around. You can stay here if you like. Really? Peach was pleasantly surprised. She liked high places and enjoyed the feeling of looking down. Really? By the way, is there something you need from me, Captain Peach? Peach grunted in acknowledgement, but she turned to him and said solemnly, I want to apologize to you. Apologize? Why? Lu Yin was puzzled. Peach ruffled her hair. I shouldn't have scared you in court. I'm sorry. She bowed solemnly as she apologized. Lu Yin was startled and quickly dodged. This was the captain of the 6th Squadron, a cruiser who was ranked in the top 20 of the Great Yu Empire. Even undying Yushan didn't need to bow before her, but now she was bowing to him. He couldn't accept it, but he couldn't avoid it. Several peaches suddenly appeared around him and bowed in unison. Lu Yin's eyes narrowed. Were these clones? Oh, it was speed. Extreme speed. After apologizing, Peach giggled at Lu Yin and turned to leave. When Bronson had introduced Peach to Lu Yin, he had told him that she was someone who would correct her mistakes and wasn't scheming. Lu Yin hadn't believed it at the time, but he hadn't expected it to be true. The little girl didn't put on the airs of a captain at all. Seeing that she was about to leave, Lu Yin hurriedly said, Captain Peach, it's rare for you to come here. Have some tea before you leave. She shook her head. No, I have other matters to attend to. Bai Shui nodded at Lu Yin and followed behind her. Lu Yin took out a bag of snacks from his cosmic ring and waved it around, making a rumbling sound. Peach paused and turned to look at the bag in his hand, her eyes burning with passion. This is the 3rd generation of Big Fatty snacks from the Kaka Weave. There are only 50,000 bags of Cryosaurus crayfish chips produced. Lu Yin was astonished. He hadn't expected this bag of snacks to have such a great origin. He had stolen them from his dai and had only wanted to see if he could attract Peach's attention, but he hadn't expected it to be so effective. I'm glad you like it. Lu Yin smiled and passed the bag to her. She instantly appeared in front of him and looked at him with a burning gaze. You're such a good person. Are you really willing to give it to me? It's delicious. Lu Yin smiled. Of course, but I only have 1 bag. It's not enough. It's enough, it's more than enough. I didn't even get a single bag back then. Thank you, Lu Yin, you're such a good person. She spoke incoherently as if she had learned some peerless battle technique. Lu Yin was speechless. How had someone like her become a captain? She shouldn't be that old. Not far away, Bai Shui stared at Lu Yin in astonishment. Although Peach wasn't scheming, she wasn't someone that just anyone could get close to. The less scheming a person was, the better they were at judging people and the more principled they were. Bai Shui had never seen Peach so enthusiastic in the past few days. Lu Yin, from now on we're friends. Peach blinked her large, sparkling eyes at Lu Yin. She was very close to him at this point. Lu Yin didn't know how to respond, so he could only say, I'll give you any snacks I have in the future. Peach's eyes lit up. Thank you, but I can't take your things for free. Is there anything I can help you with? Let me say this first. I can't beat Wendy, so don't think I'll help you kidnap someone. Lu Yin raised an eyebrow. How much did this girl know about him? She knew that he had kidnapped someone before, and she even knew so much about him. As expected, no one who could become a captain was an idiot. This loli had obviously done her research on him, and if he really treated her like a little girl, he would be in deep trouble. No need, you're a guest, so it's my duty to entertain you. Besides, didn't you say that we're friends? There's no need to be so calculative. That won't do, I don't like owing people. Peach hugged her snacks tightly and bit her index finger in thought. Her eyes lit up. Right, is there a battle technique you want to learn? I can teach you. Lu Yin was about to refuse when his heart skipped a beat. That was a footwork battle technique, right? It was so fast. Peach was pleased. Of course, that's the footwork battle technique of the 13 Imperial Squadron's flash step. The 13 Imperial Squadron's battle technique. Lu Yin was puzzled. Peach explained, the 13 Imperial Squadrons, Yu Academy, and the royal family all have their own battle techniques that His Majesty obtained from the Innerverse. Flash Step is a footwork battle technique unique to the 13 Imperial Squadrons. It can push one's speed to the limit, slow down space and deceive space. Do you want to learn it? I can teach you. Isn't that a battle technique of the 13 Imperial Squadrons? I can learn it. Lu Yin was surprised. Peach nodded. Because you're also a member of the 13 Imperial Squadrons. Me? The 13 Imperial Squadrons? Lu Yin pointed at himself. When had he joined the 13 Imperial Squadrons? Wasn't he in Yu Academy? Peach smiled. The Yushan and Zishan families are members of Yu Academy and the 13 Imperial Squadrons. You should be in the first squadron. I don't know the specifics, but you can definitely learn flash step. How about it? Do you want to learn it? I couldn't ask for more as long as it doesn't go against my principles or make things difficult for you. Peach giggled. It won't make things difficult for you. Come, I'll teach you. She then grabbed Lu Yin's right arm and the two disappeared, reappearing a few meters away in an instant. Carefully experienced the mysteries of flash step. Bronson had left the room the moment Lu Yin started learning. He knew how to use flash step, but everyone had a different definition of it. Bai Shui looked at Lu Yin enviously. She hadn't even learned it yet. Peach was extremely fast. Flash step was similar to the roving step, which required a lot of strength in the legs. However, Lu Yin had the roving step as a foundation and had experienced the Day-Night clan's speed techniques, so it wasn't difficult for him to learn it. Even so, it still took him 2 hours to just barely execute it. You really are a genius. Most people would need at least 2 months to learn flash, and those who are qualified to learn it are the elites of the 13 Imperial Squadrons, which means that they're the elites of the Great Yu Empire. You've left those people in the dust, Peach praised. Lu Yin exhaled and smiled excitedly. He had the serious Palm Day-Night Punch and Sky Beast Claw for offense, and the serious art for defense. What he lacked was extreme speed, and flash step filled that gap. Thank you, Peach. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 92. Peach waved her hand generously. Don't mention it. Remember, I'm only teaching you how to exert your strength. How much you can actually use flash depends on yourself. Everyone has a different understanding of flash, and the same battle technique can be used differently in different people's hands. Lu Yin nodded. Peach licked her lips. Well, I'm going to go enjoy some ice lobster slices. See you later. Lu Yin didn't even see how she left. If that was Peach's flash, he wondered where she ranked in the 13 Imperial Squadrons. After practicing flash twice, he looked at Bai Shui. How's life in the 6th Squadron? Not bad, the captain treats me well. What about the others? Bai Shui thought for a moment. Zhang Dingtian's life in the 5th Squadron is tough. He climbed up from the bottom. Saruzin and the captain of the 11th Squadron stared at each other for a few days without moving. Susan doesn't know. Lu Yin looked at Bai Shui's haggard face. You're very talented, try to choose a battle technique that suits you. Bai Shui nodded and didn't say anything else. A person would need to adapt to a new environment even if it was snow. In Lu Yin's opinion, they were like gold buried in the ground, and they would shine one day. As for how bright they would shine, that would depend on themselves. It didn't take long for Peach to leave with Bai Shui, a look of enjoyment on her face as she left. She even looked expectantly at Lu Yin, her intentions obvious. Lu Yin pursed his lips. The probability of rolling a 1 was 1 in 6, and the probability of stealing a snack was 1 in a million. It was too low, and he didn't dare to make any guarantees. Now that he thought about it, it was time to roll the die again. He opened his palm and crushed a star crystal to restore the die's hazy starlight. He took a deep breath, feeling nervous every time he rolled the die. 3 was unknown, and 6 required a terrifying amount of star energy. 6 was the last thing he wanted to roll, but it was also the one he looked forward to the most. Last time he'd only barely managed to open a spatial tear after spending dozens of cubes. Now that he had 200, it should be enough. He tapped the die, causing it to spin rapidly before finally coming to a stop. Finally, a black crystal card fell out with a thud. Lu Yin was overjoyed. A battle technique? He hurriedly picked it up, but was disappointed to find that it was a Mavis Bank card. Crystal Bank cards generally had genetic authentication. Of course, there were also cards that didn't require authentication and could be directly withdrawn, but there weren't many. This card had clearly been authenticated. There were 2 words engraved in the upper right corner. Yao Gu. Yao Gu? Was it a name or something? Lu Yin was puzzled, but he didn't pay much attention to it. A black crystal card from the Mavis Bank was no ordinary card. At the very least, he had never heard of a black crystal card from the Mavis Bank. It didn't matter if the card was real or fake, it was useless to him. He couldn't retrieve it, so he put it away and crushed another star crystal. He raised a hand and tapped the die, watching it slowly spin until it finally stopped at 4 pips. The next moment he entered the gray times top space. Not bad. Since that's the case, I'll practice the flash step. he muttered to himself as he slowly squatted down. Star energy surged around his calves as his body shot forward. He wanted to use the flash step to make up for his lack of speed. 2 days later, Lu Yin was panting heavily as he massaged his calves. His current speed had already surpassed the roving step, but he was still quite a distance away from Lulu. Training like this wasn't very effective, but it would be much better if there was a gravity space. Lu Yin pondered. This space could even extend time. Would it be able to increase gravity as well? He took out a cube of star crystals and crushed it, thinking about gravity. The next moment the cube disappeared and his body felt a bit heavier. This was double gravity. This space was virtual, and he could create anything he wanted as long as he paid the right amount of star energy. This was great. 1 cube of star crystals was equivalent to 1 times the normal gravity, and 40 times the normal gravity was equivalent to 40 cubes of star crystals. That was a lot, and if he hadn't asked for bribes, he didn't know when he would have been able to gather so many star crystals. Gritting his teeth, Lu Yin crushed 40 cubes of star crystals and felt a heavy pressure descend upon him. This was a space with 40 times gravity, and the familiar feeling returned. He had already used 40 cubes of star crystals to create this space, and he couldn't just use it for a day. He steeled his heart and crushed another 90 cubes of star crystals, increasing his time by 5 days. Including the 1 day he had left, he now had a total of 6 days. He didn't know how far he could go in 6 days to train the flash step. Who could be as extravagant as him, spending over 100 cubes of star crystals to train a battle technique? Lu Yin's heart ached, but he didn't slow down. He ran in the space with 40 times gravity while recalling the Day-Night clan's extreme speed battle techniques and trying to integrate them. He fell with a thump, his calves swollen. He had been too impatient. He hadn't even fully comprehended the flash step yet, and he'd already tried to integrate other techniques. Thankfully, his injuries weren't too serious. He took out some ointment and applied it before resuming his training. To others, only a second had passed, but to Lu Yin he'd cultivated for 8 days under 40 times the normal gravity. When he walked out of the gray space, he immediately fell asleep. He was too tired. 2 days later, the members of the Outerverse Youth Council arrived. Many of the Great Yu Empire's courtiers looked at the silver spacecraft in the distance with solemn gazes. The Outerverse Youth Council was a subsidiary organization of the 10 Arbiters Council. If the 10 Arbiters Council was a gathering of the universe's top geniuses, then the Outerverse Youth Council was a gathering of the Outerverse's top geniuses. Anyone who could join was either a genius or an absolute powerhouse who was unmatched in the younger generation. Even the strongest youth in the Great Yu Empire, Schuts, didn't have the qualifications to even touch the Outerverse Youth Council, which showed just how many people were gathered there. Only a famous powerhouse like Wendy Yushan could join. Countless people in the Empire were curious as to who could come out of the Outerverse Youth Council. The spacecraft soon landed, and Crown Prince Doran Yushan was waiting outside the space station. As the Crown Prince of an empire, it was already a great honor for him to personally come out and greet the Outerverse Youth Council. Dozens of people walked out of the spacecraft, led by a 3-meter-tall brawny man with a mature appearance. It was Bezer. Beside him was the pale-faced Ghostfire, and on the other side were several young Lemeters. Doran Yushan's face was solemn as he watched Bezer approach, his heart trembling. Anyone who could join the Youth Council was a cultivator under the age of 40. In the universe, the average lifespan of a human was 150 years, and 40 was the cutoff. Those under 40 were considered the younger generation, but those over 40 were not included. There were also some special races that were not included. Although the man in front of him was mature, being able to join the council meant that he was not even 40 years old. He already had the strength of an explorer, and this was the Outerverse Youth Council. He was already over 40 years old when he became an explorer. "My name is Bezer, a subordinate member of the Outerverse Youth Council," the brawny Bezer said in a deep voice as he walked up to Doran Yushan. Doran Yushan smiled. "Welcome to the Great Yu Empire, Representative Bezer. His Majesty is waiting for you in the court." Bezer nodded. "Please." Doran Yushan gestured. "Please." Not long after, Bezer and the rest arrived at the court. Today was a special day and all the courtiers were present. Even Lu Yin had been called along with a few other idle members of the royal family. Undying Yushan placed great importance on the Outerverse Youth Council, but the captains of the 13 Imperial squadrons were not present. Bezer brought Ghostfire and 2 other Limiters into the court, but he did not bow to Undying Yushan and only greeted him out of courtesy. No one cared since the other party was not from the Great Yu Empire, nor was he from the Frostwave Weave. He had an extremely high status and being polite was only because of Wendy Yushan. Bezer had been ordered to replace Wendy Yushan in supervising the training and education of the Great Yu Empire's younger generation, so he naturally had to meet the most famous elites of Yu Academy. Not long after, everyone moved to the drill grounds, where hundreds of people from Yu Academy were already waiting. Only the 5 hall masters were absent. Undying Yushan looked exhausted and left Doran to entertain Bezer and the rest while he went to rest. Without Undying Yushan holding down the fort, many people felt much more relaxed. Your Highness, I've heard of the legends of the Frostwave Weave's Undying duo since I was young. Rumor has it that His Majesty Undying Yushan once broke into the top 20 of the Innerverse Astral Combat rankings. It's admirable, Bezer said. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 93. Doran smiled. It's all in the past. Wendy is the one who's taking my father's place in the Innerverse. Is she doing well in the council? Bezer smiled. She's not someone I can casually discuss, sorry. Doran smiled and didn't mind. So these are the elites of the Great Yu Empire? Too weak. A discordant voice sounded from the Limiter beside Bezer. Doran's expression didn't change as he looked past Bezer towards the group from Yu Academy. Bezer growled. Shut up, the council is only responsible for vetting, not training. Yes, my lord, the Limiter replied in a low voice. Lu Yin stood among the courtiers and looked at the group from Yu Academy. There were many familiar faces such as Raz and Munoer, but Zhang Dingtian and the rest weren't. Big guy, he looks really powerful, Peach exclaimed in surprise as she appeared beside him out of nowhere. Lu Yin was startled. Why are you here? I came to take a look. I heard there's someone amazing here. Didn't His Majesty inform you? Peach shook her head. No. Lu Yin's eyes flashed, but he didn't say anything. On the other side, Bezer was curious. Crown Prince Doran, I heard there are 5 hall masters in Yu Academy. Why haven't I seen them? Doran was embarrassed. The hall master will be here soon. Please wait a moment. Bezer's eyes flashed coldly as he nodded, his gaze sweeping around before suddenly stopping on Peach. This girl gave him a dangerous feeling. Why was he acting like this when she was just a little girl? Crown Prince Doran was a cruiser, but even he couldn't give off such a dangerous feeling. Crown Prince Doran, may I ask who that little girl is? Bezer asked. Doran followed Bezer's gaze and replied casually, she's the captain of the Great Yu Empire's 6th Squadron, Peach. Rumor has it that the Great Yu Empire has the 13 squadrons, and the captains are all absolute powerhouses. Why haven't I seen them in the court? Bezer's tone wasn't pleasant. Doran didn't mind. The 13 squadrons have special privileges and don't need to attend court. Besides, they aren't the younger generation. Captain Peach looks young, but she's actually over 100 years old. Oh, so that's how it is. Bezer heaved a sigh of relief when he heard that the other party was over 100 years old. Otherwise, it would be strange if a little loli was so strong. At this time, 5 figures appeared at the entrance of the drill ground. The one leading them was Schutz. He was topless and had a red saber on his back. His face was full of killing intent. The eyes of Bezer and the others, who had originally been indifferent to Yu Academy's elites, lit up. This was interesting. Although Lu Yin was only a melder, he gave them the feeling that he could fight against an ordinary outerverse Limiter. Doran heaved a sigh of relief when he saw them arrive. Although the students of Yu Academy were all students, it had a special status in the Great Yu Empire. Like the Youth Council, they were all students, but they were independent of the system of power and even held great power. This was the trend of the universe's development for countless years, and no one dared to look down on these students. Even as the Crown Prince, Doran could not interfere with Yu Academy. The use of formcast models had made it inevitable for the younger generation to hold power. The youths had relied on formcast models to grow too quickly and were strong enough to fight against the older generation. The emergence of the 10 arbiters was the most obvious example, especially in recent years. For some unknown reason, the younger generation had become more terrifying, far surpassing the previous generation. Many people could not understand why. "Your Highness, we're here," Schütz spoke in a low voice, staring at Bezer. Doran smiled. "These are the members of the Outerverse Youth Council, and they will oversee the younger generation of the Empire in the future." Schütz, Durbach and the others stared at Bezer in shock. Bezer was at most 10 years older than them, and he was also part of the younger generation. However, he was already an explorer, which made it hard for them to breathe. Bezer glanced at them indifferently. They were not bad for a Melder, but that was all. No wonder Councillor Wendy was unwilling to reorganize the Great U Empire's Youth Council and let Lord Bezer oversee it. "There really is no talent left," Ghostfire, who had been silent all this time, spoke up, his tone full of provocation. Everyone from the Great U Empire had ugly expressions, including Doran's. Wendy Yushan had been ordered to reorganize the Empire's Youth Council, but she had said that there was no talent left. This was a disgrace to the Great U Empire. Bezer did not stop them. This was the truth. Schütz stared at Ghostfire. "Who are you?" Ghostfire's pale face sneered. "Ghostfire, a subordinate counselor of the Outerverse Youth Council." Schütz was shocked, and so were the others. Ghostfire was only a sentinel, but he had joined the Outerverse Youth Council? Even Schütz, the strongest of the Great U Empire's younger generation, did not qualify. This did not mean that Schütz was not Ghostfire's opponent, but rather that this person had terrifying talent. "You don't seem to believe me? You're all Melders, so I can play with you without suppressing my realm," Ghostfire said arrogantly. Doran's eyes flashed as he looked at Bezer. Bezer did not stop him, his gaze indifferent. "What big words. In that case, I'll represent you Academy and fight you." Tianming walked out with a solemn expression. "Suppress your realm," Schütz said indifferently. "I already said that there's no need. Realm is also a type of strength. Does your country have to fight at the same level? No one talks about fairness outside," Ghostfire said disdainfully. In the distance, Lu Yin was shocked. He had seen the strength of Tianming and the other Hall Masters, and he knew that he wasn't their match. After all, they were Hall Masters of the U Academy, absolute peak Melders. If Ghostfire wanted to challenge them as a sentinel, it would be terrifying if he won. Everyone dispersed, and Tianming stared at Ghostfire with a solemn expression. This person had dared to challenge him, and Bezer was no idiot. Agreeing to let him fight meant that he was confident. Why would a mere sentinel do that? "You can attack now," Tianming said. Ghostfire sneered and raised his hand, a ball of black flames floating out. Everyone was shocked. This was an innate gift of black flames. Bezer's lips curled up as he looked at Ghostfire in admiration. This person had relied on this innate gift to join them and become the pinnacle of power amongst the younger generation. With a whoosh, the black flames formed a chain and flung it at Tianming, scorching the void and distorting it. Tianming did not rashly make contact, instead raising his hand to form a claw and unleashing the 20th form of the Sky Beast Claw. With a bestial roar, the Sky Beast Claw swept past the flaming chain and smashed into the ground. Dust flew everywhere as everyone stared at the battlefield. Tianming was stunned. His attack had been ineffective. On the other side, Ghostfire swung his flaming chain at Tianming again, the chain shaking the ground as he attempted to seal the space around Tianming. Tianming charged at Ghostfire with extreme speed and struck out with his palm. 3 stacks. 3 consecutive explosions rang out as the same strength was stacked on top of each other. A shockwave swept across the battlefield, the pressure causing the elites of U Academy to retreat as they looked at the battlefield in shock. This was Tianming's strength, enough to suppress all of U Academy's elites. Unfortunately, Ghostfire, who should have been attacked, was unscathed. He stood in place and looked at Tianming arrogantly, the flaming chain still burning in his hand. Everyone looked at this scene in shock. U Academy's Hall Master Tianming was actually unable to attack that person. Doran's pupils shrank. This is the transformation of matter and substance. This person's innate gift allows him to transform his body into a special constitution in an instant and avoid physical attacks. Isn't that right, Representative Bezer? Bezer sighed, as expected of Crown Prince Doran. Indeed, Ghostfire's flames are called the Void Flame. It allows him to burn his body to nothing and then reassemble. Although the duration is short, It's enough to avoid physical attacks. What a great innate gift. No wonder he could join the Outerverse Youth Council as a sentinel. He's invincible among sentinels, Doran said in shock. On the other side, Peach gave the same explanation and continued, some extremely powerful cultivators can develop their innate gifts to a terrifying degree. They can transform between real and illusory at will, even replacing the sun, moon, stars, and natural disasters. This Ghostfire is far from that level, but his unique innate gift means that his future is limitless. The universe is truly mysterious. There are all kinds of people. Lu Yin's eyes narrowed as he thought to himself, transformation between real and illusory? It's very similar to that person, but that person didn't rely on the uniqueness of his innate gift, instead developing it to a terrifying degree. This Ghostfire is still far from that level, but he's very difficult to defeat in the Sentinel realm. No wonder he dared to challenge you Academy's Hallmaster. His innate gift is almost unbeatable. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 94. Tianming stood in the middle of the field, calmly looking at Ghostfire. Ghostfire was pleased. What? You admit defeat? Tianming was helpless. I can't defeat you, but you can't defeat me either. Your attacks aren't strong enough to hurt me. Ghostfire's face sank. Tianming was right. No matter how talented he was, he could only remain undefeated at best. He wasn't strong enough to win. All right, Ghostfire, you should be proud to be able to draw with the U Academy's Hallmaster, Baser said loudly. Ghostfire wasn't satisfied. Brother Baser, I heard that there's a powerful sentinel cultivator in the Great U Empire who can challenge those above his realm. I wonder if I can spar with him to learn from. Everyone was stunned and many subconsciously looked at Lu Yin. Doran's gaze changed as he glanced at Lu Yin and then at Baser. Counselor Baser, you must be tired from the long journey. Father ordered me to prepare a banquet, please. Baser smiled faintly. Prince Doran is too polite, there's no need to rush. I heard that your King Zhou Xian is invincible among sentinels. Why don't you come out and spar with Ghostfire? Ghostfire also wants to learn how to be invincible among sentinels. Ghostfire looked at Lu Yin arrogantly, full of provocation. Peach bared her teeth. This guy is so annoying, you shouldn't go, he's invincible. Lu Yin's eyes flashed. These fellows were clearly looking for trouble. They hadn't interacted before, so there was only one possibility. Wendy Yushan. News of him marrying her had spread, and the undying Yushan would really cause trouble for him. Doran wanted to decline, but Lu Yin had already walked out. No matter what, someone was provoking him at his doorstep. He had to have the courage to fight regardless of victory or defeat, or he would never be able to raise his head again. Schutz and the rest looked at Lu Yin deep in thought. Tianming whispered to him, be careful to avoid his attacks, don't try to be brave, he only attacks once. Lu Yin nodded and faced Ghostfire. I'm King Zishan Lu Yin. You want to learn how to become invincible among sentinels? I can teach you for free. Ghostfire's lips curled up. Alright, teach me then. The black flames in his hand formed a chain that floated in the air and then lashed out at Lu Yin. The black flames didn't just carry a scorching heat, they also carried an indescribable feeling of nothingness. Lu Yin didn't dare to touch them and hurriedly dodged, causing the ground to crack and sparks to fly. Lu Yin casually struck out with his palm, the space render palm compressing the air around him as he viciously struck out at the Ghostfire. In the face of such an attack, Ghostfire did not even want to dodge. He also raised his hand and struck out, shattering the space render palm. Baser sneered. Ghostfire hadn't been able to enter the Outerverse Youth Council just because of his innate gift. Even if he didn't have any innate gift, his strength still couldn't be underestimated. His innate gift only gave him the ability to challenge even stronger powerhouses. Lu Yin hadn't expected Ghostfire to be so strong and be able to easily shatter his space render palm. It seemed like Ghostfire's single attack against Tianming had been an act in order to deal with him. The black flames floated in the air, growing larger and larger until they covered the entire area. King Zishan, is this what you call invincible sentinels? How disappointing. Ghostfire laughed. Lu Yin didn't care, only using the roving step to dodge. Ghostfire's flames grew larger and larger, shrinking the area with the roving step. Many looked on worriedly. If Lu Yin lost, the great Yu Empire would become a laughingstock. Amongst the Yu Academy elites, Raz sneered. He didn't care about his reputation as long as Lu Yin lost. Zhou stared at Lu Yin with a strange gaze, while Schutz's expression darkened. Is this all he's got? How can he defeat you with that? Let's wait and see, Zhou said indifferently, not saying much. Lu Yin's gaze turned cold as he saw the black flames covering the entire area and even the area above him. He exerted strength in his legs, disappearing in an instant and reappearing in front of Ghostfire. Everyone was shocked and Beizer's expression changed. Few sentinels could achieve such speed. It was no wonder they were called invincible. Unfortunately, he was facing the unbeatable Ghostfire. Schutz, Zhou, and the rest looked at each other in shock. Lu Yin had actually mastered Flash Step. Doran Yushan's eyes also lit up. Such proficiency. Peach clenched her fists and cheered for Lu Yin. Ghostfire didn't mind. Do you only know how to run? Look up, there's nowhere for you to hide. With that, the black flames in the sky pressed down like a black cloud, forcing everyone to retreat. Lu Yin disappeared with Flash Step once more, but this time he didn't evade and instead faced the black flames head-on. Cold energy surged around his body and turned into solid ice as he rushed into the flames. Ice was the best way to deal with fire, and he had borrowed White Snow's innate gift to use it. This was his first time using it, and while he wasn't familiar with it, it was enough to defend against it for a short period of time. Ghostfire didn't know where Lu Yin was, but Beizer and the rest saw him. They were shocked to see the layer of ice covering his body. It was an innate gift of ice. Doran Yushan was shocked. He remembered Sigmund's report that Lu Yin's innate gift was something like a dice. How could it be an innate gift of ice? Ordinary ice couldn't withstand the black flames, but it helped him penetrate them and appear in the sky above the drill ground. His body flickered as he appeared beside a large bell and kicked it, causing it to ring loudly as he smashed it towards the will-o'-the-wisp. Ghostfire couldn't see his surroundings because of the black flames, but he didn't mind as he was confident that Lu Yin couldn't hurt him. However, when the bell landed on the ground, he knew that he was in trouble. His vision went dark not because of the flames, but because he had been sealed by the bell. Ghostfire was trapped by the bell like a rat trapped in a small black house, unable to escape no matter how hard he tried. The bell was made of special materials that could defend against attacks from Lemeters, and the ground wasn't easy to destroy either. It would take a sentinel at least 3 hours to break through the ground and escape. Everyone stared blankly. How could this be possible? The bell rumbled as Ghostfire tried his best to escape, but to no avail. Lu Yin landed on the bell and knocked on it casually. Not bad, it's really hard. Cheating, you're cheating. A Lemeter beside Beizer shouted angrily. Lu Yin was surprised. Didn't you guys say that there was no need for a fair fight? How is this cheating? The Lemeter was furious. Beizer reached out to stop him and stared at Lu Yin. That's right, a fight is a fight, there's no such thing as fairness. Since he challenged you, a loss is a loss without any complaints. The Youth Council is not a sore loser. Doran Yushan spoke up. Representative Beizer, this is just a spar, there's no need to determine a winner. Besides, Ghostfire hasn't lost, he'll be able to escape in 3 hours at most. Beizer growled. So what if he escapes? Ghostfire can't win with King Zishan's speed. My brother can't beat Ghostfire either, how about we call this a draw? Doran smiled. Buzir didn't refuse, but he didn't agree either. He just stared at Lu Yin for a long time before frowning when he heard the bell ring. He casually waved his hand, causing the ground of the drill ground to explode right beneath the bell. Everyone could feel a strong gust of wind that was as sharp as a blade, and they could feel Buzir's strength. Ghostfire rushed out from the ground and glared at Lu Yin. Despicable, fight fair and square if you have the ability, what's the point of using tricks? Is this how the great Yu Empire fights? Lu Yin looked at him in amusement. Fighting is unpredictable, you need both strength and brains. I said before we started that I'd teach you for free. Ghostfire was furious, his already pale face turning even paler. Ghostfire, come back. Beizer roared. Ghostfire gritted his teeth. Brother Beizer, let me fight him again. I come back. Beizer's body turned into a terrifying bear in an instant, his roar shaking the ground and causing the ground to crack and the clouds to evaporate. Everyone's scalps went numb as they looked at Bezer in shock. Lu Yin's pupils shrank. What a powerful pressure. In that instant he felt that this person was far more pressuring than Sigmund and the others. Ghostfire's expression changed drastically, but he didn't dare to refute. Bezer calmed down and looked at Doran. Your Highness, we've embarrassed ourselves. Let's go, we're hungry and want to try the Great Yu Empire's delicacies. Doran smiled and gestured for them to leave. The crowd watched Bezer and the others leave and couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. The Outerverse Youth Council had put a lot of pressure on them, and even a sentinel was helpless against the Yu Academy's Hall Master. If Lu Yin hadn't saved the day, the Great Yu Empire would have been mocked by the entire universe. Peach appeared beside Lu Yin. Good job, friend. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 95. Lu Yin's expression turned solemn. Do you know who Bezer is? He doesn't seem that old, probably the same generation as me. Peach shook her head. I don't know. She then scanned the ministers and pointed at one of them. You come here. A middle-aged man trembled as he walked over. Captain Peach, King Zishan, what is it? Who is this Bezer? Peach asked. Schutz, Gerbach and Tianming arrived at the same time and looked at the minister. The minister respectfully replied, Bezer is from the Heim Weave, and his position in the Outerverse Youth Council is second only to the 5 counselors. People call him Violent Bear and his innate gift is the astral beast, the Star-Swallowing Bear. Star-Swallowing Bear? A living innate gift? Lu Yin was astonished. The minister replied, yes, the Star-Swallowing Bear is a type of astral beast. Rumor has it that the strongest of them can swallow planets. Bezer is an explorer but he once defeated a cruiser. Lu Yin's expression turned solemn. No wonder he was so terrifying. A cruiser was equivalent to a captain of the 13 Imperial squadrons in the Great Yu Empire. Alright, there's nothing else for you to do. You can leave. Peach waved her hand. The minister felt as if he had been pardoned and immediately ran off. She patted Lu Yin's shoulder. Don't think too much about it. The universe is huge and there are bound to be some freaks. You're already very strong and at least Ghostfire won't be able to beat you. He's a strong opponent that even Tianming couldn't defeat. Tianming was speechless. Captain Peach, can you not use me as an example? Am I wrong? Who was the one who couldn't do anything to him just now? Peach glanced at him. Lu Yin smiled. Although we're of the same generation, he looks to be in his 30s. I'm not even 20 yet, so I have plenty of time to catch up. I'll definitely be stronger than him when I reach his age. Peach smiled. Well said, good luck. I'll be leaving now. Lu Yin nodded and watched her leave. Lu Yin, when did you become so close to Captain Peach? Gerbach asked curiously. Lu Yin smiled and glanced at Schutz. Schutz looked back at him. Thank you. There's no need. I'm doing this for myself. I wanted to challenge them but Ghostfire suppressed my arrogance. If it weren't for you, Yu Academy would have become a joke. King Zishan, I agree to let you learn the first 20 forms of the Sky Beast Claw. Lu Yin was delighted. Really? That's great. Schutz nodded and turned to leave. He didn't mention anything about his battle with Lu Yin. It seemed that Ghostfire's words had touched them. Why should someone of the same generation suppress their realms when fighting? Realms were also a type of power and that was true. However, if Schutz hadn't suppressed his realm, then Lu Yin definitely wouldn't have been his opponent. After Schutz left, Gerbach and Tianming left as well. Before they left, they told Lu Yin to head straight to the first stage. The first 20 forms of the Sky Beast Claw Stone Wall could be learned from the 5 halls. Only after 20 forms would one have to go to a designated location to learn them. Doran Yushan and the rest had nothing to do with Lu Yin, and no one had asked him to join. He headed straight to the first stage with Bronson, eager to learn the Sky Beast Claw. The first 20 forms were enough to raise the power of the Sky Beast Claw to the level of a 5-star Sirius Palm. It was best not to reveal the Sirius Palm if possible. The form cast pool was the closest to the drill ground, which was where Tianming was in Yu Academy. Lu Yin headed straight for it. He arrived almost at the same time as Tianming. Tianming personally led him to the stone wall. The first 20 forms aren't a secret. There are more than 50 people in Yu Academy who have learned them, but not many have succeeded. With your talent you'll be able to learn them quickly. Lu Yin looked at the stone wall in front of him. There was a claw print on it and he quickly immersed himself in it. Tianming didn't disturb him and left. The claw imprints on the stone wall attracted his attention, and he activated his cosmic art. The claw imprints appeared in full detail, and he could clearly see the transformations of each style. He had already learned 15 styles, so the last 5 wouldn't take him much time. Half an hour later Lu Yin walked out. Tianming looked at him in shock. You've learned it. Lu Yin smiled, barely. Tianming's eyes narrowed and he praised, I'm a little jealous of you, your talent surpasses everyone else's. Even Rockney, who specializes in the Sky Beast Claw, couldn't learn the first 20 forms so quickly. The difference is quite large. Lu Yin didn't linger on the topic, instead saying, Hall Master Tianming, I remember you used a special battle technique in your battle with Ghost Fire. I think it's called 3 stacks. Tianming smiled, yes, 3 stacks. Why are you interested? Lu Yin was eager to try it out. Can I see it? Tianming nodded. Actually, the 3 stacks originates from Grand Top Weave. There's a powerful battle technique that has been passed down since ancient times called the 9 stacks technique. I stayed in Grand Top Weave for a period of time and I barely managed to learn the 3 stacks technique. As he spoke, he struck out with his palm towards the void. The same amount of power was sent out 3 times, each time stronger than the last. The third time was even twice or thrice as powerful as the first time, and it was similar to the cosmic palm stellar explosion. Lu Yin's eyes lit up. I want to try. Tianming nodded. Sure, be careful. He then struck out at Lu Yin. Lu Yin's expression turned serious and he raised his hand and struck out as well. 3 stars appeared vaguely around his palm. There was a soft thump, but Tianming didn't use any strength. Lu Yin only felt the power of 3 stacks and he didn't detonate the stars either. Instead, he quietly experienced the power of 3 stacks while using Sirius to observe the changes in Tianming's palm. With the third thump, Lu Yin was pushed back. How was it? Tianming asked. Lu Yin shook his numb right hand. Amazing way of exerting force. Did you learn it? Tianming smiled. Lu Yin was startled and a little embarrassed. A little. Tianming didn't mind. I've long heard that you can learn battle techniques through battle. Don't think too much about it, this is your ability. This universe is a place where the strong prey on the weak, and while it may seem civilized, it's actually crueler than the ancient era. However, it's best if you don't touch the battle techniques of some ancient races. First, it's very difficult for you to learn them, and second, they won't allow outsiders to learn them. Lu Yin nodded. Thank you for the information, Hallmaster Tianming. I'll take my leave. Tianming nodded and watched Lu Yin leave. Lu Yin didn't rest when he returned to King Zishan's palace, immediately going into seclusion to experience the power of 3 stacks. It took him more than an hour to understand and he couldn't help but sigh at the power of Sirius. It could display every change in an opponent's battle techniques, and this was only the beginning stages of Sirius. What would happen if he could master the entire technique? Would he be able to learn the battle techniques of some other powerful races? That would be terrifying. How terrifying would the power of Sirius be? Lu Yin didn't become complacent. The universe was filled with monsters, and he believed that someone had mastered the entire set of Sirius. That person would be so strong that he couldn't comprehend it, he was just starting out. In the depths of the universe, there was a vast continent with a city in the sky. This was the Outerverse Youth Council's base. Overlooking the continent from the city in the sky, it was as if a god ruled over the world. 9 satellites hung high in the sky, each one emitting a silver light that connected them to the continent like a river, spanning endless distances. At the edge of the city in the sky, a young girl looked down. She was beautiful and natural, wearing a white tight-fitting jacket with gold trim. She held a 2-meter-long silver sword in a scabbard, and her long black hair fell to her waist. Her body exuded a tranquil and simple aura, and her eyes were serene with a trace of sharpness. She was like a sheathed sword, and although it was concealed, it was still sharp. She looked down quietly, watching as more and more people knelt on the ground. Her gaze was calm and no one knew what she was thinking. Behind her, a handsome man dressed in black slowly walked over, his gaze gentle. What are you looking at, Wendy? To them we are gods. Then to us who is the god? Wendy asked indifferently. The man smiled. No one can be our god. We decide our own fate. Wendy's eyes lit up, but her expression was calm. Why are you looking for me? Bezer reports that your country's King Zishan has publicly announced that he wants to marry you. The man smiled, his tone slightly mocking. So, Wendy didn't care. What do you want to do? Bezer is waiting for your orders. The man smiled. Wendy turned around and looked at him calmly. It doesn't matter. Do as you wish. Speaking of which, it's been a long time since someone gave me a reward. Come on, give me some encouragement. Thank you very much. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 96. Don't you want to know about him? I heard that he defeated Ghostfire, the man asked. Wendy continued walking, unfazed by the news. Ghostfire? To her he was nothing but an ant. These people weren't worth her time. The man's smile faded as he watched Wendy leave. He activated his gadget. Play as you wish. Yes, Counselor Puyu, Bezer replied. Over the next half a month, Lu Yin didn't leave King Zishan's palace at all. He studied the 3 stacks battle technique and tried to incorporate it into other battle techniques while also observing the star chart. During this period he also rolled the dice, but he found that the dice were always 1 in 4 pips. 3 pips never appeared from the beginning to the end, and the same went for 6 pips. 2 pips also appeared once, but it was not very useful. Lu Yin didn't plan on rolling the die for the time being as he didn't have many star crystals left. He also felt that his spirit was a little weak, probably because he rolled the die too often. Until he replenished his star crystals, he decided to take a break. 2 months after Lu Yin arrived at Xenu Star, an earth-shattering piece of news shook the entire outerverse. Astral 10 had arrived. The academy that carried the hopes of countless youths in the Frostwave Weave had finally appeared. There were countless academies in the universe, but none of them had reached the level of the Astral Combat Academy. This was especially true when Astral 9 had arrived in the Endless Weaves and given birth to countless geniuses. The entire outerverse was in an uproar, and after so many years, the 72 Weaves of the outerverse had been trying to find a way to create another Astral Combat Academy. Now Astral 10 had finally appeared. No one knew how the Astral Combat Academy had appeared or how it had been entered. Only a few powerhouses knew about it, such as the Great Yu Empire's Undying Yushan and Fire's Melt Planet's Master Yen Wujiu. On this day, Undying Yushan announced to the entire nation that 5 days later, the 3rd Squadron's Captain Zhu Lang, 5th Squadron's Captain Huaqin Shan, 9th Squadron's Captain Rocky Anna, and Crown Prince Doran Yushan would lead the students to Astral 10. Lu Yin was also notified that he could participate in Astral 10's assessment. When Earth's trial had failed, it was reasonable to say that those who had failed were not qualified to go to Astral 10. However, some of them had special statuses and no one dared to stop them, such as Lu Yin, Jenny Anna, Lulu Mavis and the others. These people were also allowed to go to Astral 10. Including those who had passed the trial and the elites of Yu Academy, there were close to 100 people in total. There were almost 100 people from the Great Yu Empire participating in the Astral 10 exam. And the entire Frostwave We've had at least a few 100,000 people participating. In addition, there were also geniuses from other weaves and even the Innerverse. Who knew how many geniuses would gather for Astral 10's exam? Schutz and the other Hall Masters are all going, along with Hua Xiaoling, Jenny Anna, Roz, Xiao Luo Lulu. Lu Yin looked at the list expectantly. There were quite a few familiar faces among the 100 people, which was interesting. He wondered how many of them would be able to join Astral 10. There was even Ghostfire, which meant that this person was also traveling with the Great Yu Empire. Lu Yin suddenly thought of Mira, that seductive woman with the red lotus witch bow. Only by joining Astral 10 and achieving something that she would be proud of would she be able to recommend him to the Outerverse Youth Council. Lu Yin believed that she had the ability since she was from the 10 Arbiters Council. His family wanted him to join the Great Yu Empire's Youth Council, so he was looking forward to seeing if he could make them drop their jaws in shock. At this moment, a notification came through. Lu Yin glanced at it and was surprised. Bezer is inviting me to a banquet? Beep 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 beep. Jerbok contacted Lu Yin and Lu Yin opened the screen. Bezer invited you? Jerbok immediately asked when he saw Lu Yin. Lu Yin nodded. He invited you as well? To be precise, he invited all the students who are going to Astral 10's assessment. Are you going? Lu Yin was conflicted. He could tell from Ghostfire's attitude that the Outerverse Youth Council didn't like him, and it probably had something to do with Wendy Yushan. Attending their banquet at this time would be asking for trouble. Lu Yin, it's best if you go together. Baser is a member of the Outerverse Youth Council, so he definitely knows a lot about the Astral Combat Academy, Gerbok said seriously. Lu Yin's eyes flashed. That's right, all right, I'll go. Gerbok nodded and closed the screen. That night, many students from influential families gathered at the DU Hotel's luxurious top-floor banquet hall. Roz, Rucky Mathers, Hua Xiaoling and Jenny Anna were all present. By the time Lu Yin arrived, the place was almost full. Lu Yin immediately saw Schutz, who was too different from the rest. Everyone else was dressed neatly as if they were getting married, but Schutz was dressed like he usually was. He was even topless, as if he was afraid that others wouldn't notice the scars on his body. Roz was in stark contrast to Schutz, as if he were a peacock spreading its tail. Those who didn't know would think that he was on a blind date. Although it was called a banquet, it was actually just a gathering to get to know each other. After all, they were all going to Astral 10 to participate in the exam, so it was best if they could help each other out. Lu Yin's gaze swept past Hua Xiaoling and the other aristocrats, arriving at a long table where Gerbok was working hard to eat a huge piece of meat. Why are you here? Aren't you going to make some friends? Gerbok's words were slurred as he spoke, bits of meat falling out of his mouth. A girl in gorgeous robes was so frightened that she walked away in disgust, clapping her hands as she did so. Lu Yin shrugged, not interested. Why isn't anyone looking for you? You're a Hall Master of Yu Academy, one of the top experts in the Empire. Gerbok sneered, not many know me. But everyone has heard of you, Lu Yin smiled. Zhou popped out of nowhere with a bang and glared at Lu Yin. You still dare to show up? Lu Yin rolled his eyes. What's wrong? I helped you during the trial. Zhou grew angry. You dash. But she suddenly stopped talking because Gerbok was watching. She didn't want to embarrass herself by hiding the fact that she had been robbed by Lu Yin. Lu Yin's lips curled up as he casually picked up a piece of meat and stuffed it into her mouth. Eat, you might not have anything to eat in the Astral Combat Academy. She glared at Lu Yin before tossing the piece of meat away and walking away. That girl is so rude, Gerbok grumbled unhappily. Lu Yin replied, girls should have a little temper. Compared to others, Zhou is much better. Is that so? Gerbok didn't believe him. Lu Yin told him to keep an eye on himself and slowly walked behind Jenny Anna. Hi, Miss Jenny. She turned around and her face darkened when she saw Lu Yin. She snorted and walked away. Lu Yin smiled at Gerbok. See, Zhou has a good temper. Gerbok nodded. Seems like it, my sister's upbringing is quite good. The faces of those who saw the scene twitched and they walked away speechlessly. In the distance, Hua Xiaoling was talking to Hua Zhong, who smiled and nodded when he saw Lu Yin. Lu Yin nodded back. The two hadn't interacted before, so a nod was considered a greeting. Xiaoling, this King Zishan is very strong. You might not be able to win even as a melder, Hua Zhong said solemnly. Hua Xiaoling grunted and glanced at Lu Yin. She was just like Jenny Anna, still worried about being threatened by Lu Yin. However, she had to admit that this person's improvement was too fast. She had seen him fight Ghostfire with such speed that she couldn't do anything about. His battle experience was also greater than hers. On the other side, the peacock Roz was furious and flushed red. Opposite him, a youth sneered, you still have the face to come after failing the trial. If not for your father, Roz, you wouldn't even have the right to come here. Don't forget, Ike, you lost to me, Roz growled. Ike sneered, that was before. Besides, you failed the trial anyway, so there's no way you can join the Astral Combat Academy. Get the hell out of here and give your spot to someone else from the Empire, huh? Roz was furious, but he couldn't retort. The banquet was a social event, especially since the Astral Combat Academy's assessment was about to begin. They needed to work together to deal with the young experts of the other powers, or even the other weaves in the Innerverse. The Hua and Anna families were surrounded, and Tianming Locke and the others were also being courted. Only Lu Yin, Gerbok and a few others were not approached, especially Lu Yin. Everyone knew that he had offended too many people and he was only a sentinel. There weren't many sentinels from the Great Yu Empire participating in the Astral Combat Academy's assessment, so no one bothered with him. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 97. Ding 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 ding. Everyone looked in the same direction, where Ghostfire walked out at Bazer's signal. His pale face broke into a smile as he faced the 100 elites of the Great Yu Empire. Ghostfire paused for a moment before speaking in a hoarse voice. Everyone, Big Brother Bazer is new to the Empire, and he will be interacting with all of you for a while. I don't have any gifts for you, but I would like to share some information about the Astral Combat Academy with you so that you won't be too confused. Everyone was excited. It had finally begun. They had come to this banquet to find suitable people to work with, but more importantly, they wanted to know more about the Astral Combat Academy. Bazer stepped forward and glanced at everyone. Strictly speaking, they were all of the same generation, but in Bazer's eyes, they were all ants. He didn't mind sharing some secrets that only a small number of top elites knew to these ants. The Astral Combat Academy has been passed down since ancient times. There are 8 academies in the Innerverse and 2 in the Outerverse. There are members of the Outerverse Youth Council who study in Astral 9, so we are not completely ignorant of the Astral Combat Academy. Rather than calling it an academy, it's more like a place of struggle. Everything you want there must be fought for and not distributed. There are no specialized mentors there, Bazer explained. Everyone was shocked. No mentors? How could it still be called an academy? Bazer smiled. I don't know about the other academies, but in Astral 9, if you want to learn, you must fight for it. If you want a mentor to teach, you must pay a price. There are mentors in the Astral Combat Academy, but they can teach or not. Thus, I would like to remind everyone that battle is always the main theme of the Astral Combat Academy. Learning must be obtained through battle. Don't treat the Astral Combat Academy as an academy, it's a battlefield. Lord Bazer, is it true that the Astral Combat Academy has an ancient trial zone? Someone asked. Bazer smiled. This is classified information, so it's not convenient for me to reveal it. Lord Bazer, do you know why Astral 10 descended to the Frostwave Weave? Was it really the 10 Arbiters' decision? Someone else asked. Bazer also gave a perfunctory answer. He knew some information, but these ants didn't deserve to know because they couldn't enter the Astral Combat Academy. Only the best geniuses of the universe could enter, and these people couldn't compete. Lu Yin watched the scene unfold. Bazer's gaze was filled with pity and pride, which made him very uncomfortable, but he was powerless to change it. Gerbach was about to leave with Jerlin, no longer interested in listening. Schitz was long gone. Just as he was about to leave, Bazer suddenly called out, Everyone, I have another announcement to make. He looked at Lu Yin. Please wait, King Zishan. Lu Yin turned back with a puzzled expression. Bazer smiled. Counselor Wendy Yushan of the Outerverse Youth Council has asked me to inform you that she is canceling her engagement with you with immediate effect. Lu Yin's eyes widened as he clenched his fists in anger. Everyone was stunned. Gerbach and Jerlin, who had just reached the door, were stunned. Wu Xiaoling, Jenny Anna, and the others were equally stunned. No one had expected this to happen. Bazer actually announced it in front of everyone. This was an insult, a naked insult. Suddenly all sorts of mocking laughter rang out. Lu Yin was King Zishan, but he was still just an idle prince. Not many people cared about him, especially when he wanted to marry Wendy Yushan. At this moment, the mockery spread to the greatest extent, and everyone looked at him with mocking eyes. Lu Yin's gaze was cold as he stared at Bazer. This banquet had been a plot against him, all for this moment. Bazer hadn't even thought of telling these people about the Astral Combat Academy. He'd only wanted to draw them here and then announce it in front of everyone in the name of the Outerverse Youth Council. This name alone was enough to spread the news throughout the universe. Lu Yin wanting to marry Wendy Yushan had only been a joke on Xenu Star. But from this moment on, this joke would spread throughout the universe because it had been announced in the name of the Outerverse Youth Council. Rasmus smirked. Jenny Anna was stunned, a trace of pity flashing through her eyes. Wu Xiaoling's gaze was complicated and she looked sad. Tianming and the rest frowned. This was too much. Bazer wanted Lu Yin to become the laughingstock of the entire universe. Unless he could marry Wendy Yushan, this matter would forever be a stain on his record. Zhou walked over to Lu Yin and tugged at him. Let's go. Zhou pulled him back as well. I'm sorry, I didn't think this would happen. Baiser smiled. I'm sorry, this is an order from Her Excellency Wendy Yushan. As compensation, I can promise you that as long as you successfully enter the Astral Combat Academy, I will be your referrer in the future and help you enter the Outerverse Youth Council. Everyone's expressions changed again and they didn't know what to think anymore. These words were too vicious, and even if Lu Yin managed to enter the Outerverse Youth Council with his own abilities in the future, he would still be labeled with the word compensation. Baiser was clearly trying to kill him. Lu Yin's eyes were bloodshot. He rarely felt this angry. The first time had been because of Lu Xiaoge, who had brought him extreme pain. The second time had been in his dreams, when that jade finger had crushed the heavens. The third time was now. Zhou pulled him back and whispered, "Don't be rash, he's an explorer." Lu Yin stared at Baiser, the coldness in his eyes sending a chill down Baiser's spine. Baiser's expression changed slightly, feeling like he had done something he would regret for the rest of his life. However, he didn't mind and smiled. How could a mere sentinel surpass Ghostfire no matter how talented he was? There were too many geniuses in the universe, and such a person couldn't even enter the Astral Combat Academy, let alone threaten him. In the end, Lu Yin left without a word under everyone's mocking and pitying gazes. Outside the hotel, Zhou patted Lu Yin's shoulder. I'm sorry, I was the one who persuaded you to come. I didn't think this would happen. Zhou also looked at Lu Yin with a trace of worry in her eyes. Lu Yin shrugged and smiled. It's fine, it's just a cancellation of the engagement. I didn't want to marry her anyway. Zhou sighed. Brother Lu, the universe is cruel. Without strength you'll always be weak, and the weak don't have a sword to protect their dignity. Princess Wendy told the five of us, so don't think too much about it until you have a sword. With that he left with Zhou. Lu Yin stood in place, his heart far from being as calm as he appeared. Everything that had just happened would be unforgettable for the rest of his life. He had experienced the ultimate humiliation. Baiser and Wendy Yushan. It didn't take long for the news to spread, and Lu Yin became the target of ridicule. He had become a toad trying to swallow the heavens. 5 days later, a giant spacecraft passed through 3 rings of land and entered the endless darkness of space. It carried the Great Yu Empire's younger generation of elites and their hopes for the Astral Combat Academy. Even Undying Yushan appeared at the space station to send them off. No one knew how many of them would be able to enter the Astral Combat Academy, but they could only hope that they wouldn't all be wiped out. Baiser had also come to send off Ghostfire as he boarded the spacecraft. He was confident in Ghostfire's abilities. No sentinel could defeat him. Even the freaks of the Innerverse might not be able to do so, so it shouldn't be difficult for him to enter the Astral Combat Academy. Counselor Baiser, I heard that you held a banquet a few days ago. How are the younger generation of the Great Yu Empire? The Undying Yushan asked. Baiser smiled. Not bad, they're all very motivated. The Undying Yushan nodded. Is that so? He coughed twice and placed a hand on Baiser's shoulder. It's been hard on you to announce the annulment of the engagement to Little Yin. However, this is an internal matter of the Great Yu Empire, and it's not up to you to announce it. The Undying Yushan's tone turned cold as his hand on Baiser's shoulder grew heavier. Baiser didn't mind at first, but as the Undying Yushan's hand grew heavier, his expression changed. He wanted to resist, but no matter what he did, he couldn't shake off the Undying Yushan's right hand. It was like a mountain was pressing down on his shoulder, preventing him from moving. Suddenly, a terrifying pressure descended, and Baiser's face turned pale as he spat out a mouthful of blood. The image of a brutal star-devouring bear appeared on his body, but it was crushed in less than a second. The Undying Yushan slowly withdrew his hand and smiled at Baiser before leaving. From start to finish, Baiser couldn't resist at all. Even when he used his innate gift, nothing changed around him. Not even the surface of the ground cracked. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 98. This was the Undying Yushan's strength. He had once looked down on the Innerverse and had entered the top 20 of the Astral Combat rankings just like Wendy Yushan. Now he was a hunter, and even though he was heavily injured and didn't have long to live, he was still the undying Yushan. Bezer panted heavily as his complexion slowly returned to normal. He gritted his teeth and glared at the undying Yushan's back, his eyes filled with unwillingness. On the spacecraft, Lu Yin reunited with Xiao Luo and Lulu Mavis. They hadn't seen each other since they had landed on Xenu Star. "How, Lu Yin, I heard that your engagement was called off. How embarrassing, huh?" Lulu laughed heartily. Xiao Luo patted Lu Yin's shoulder. "Don't mind her." Lu Yin smiled. "It's fine. But you guys, didn't Bezer invite you to his banquet?" Lulu rolled her eyes. "Do you think just anyone has the right to invite me?" Xiao Luo shrugged. "I just got back 2 days ago. I wonder how strict the exam will be this time and who will go from the Innerverse," Lu Yin said as he looked up at the sky. "The Innerverse? Not many will go," Xiao Luo said. Lu Yin was puzzled. Xiao Luo glanced at Lulu. "You should know that Astral 10 is an academy that's been banished." Lulu nodded and stopped smiling. The Astral Combat Academies are ranked according to their scores. Astral 10 has been in last place for many years, or else they wouldn't have been sent to the Frostwave Weave. Rumor has it that when the news of Astral 10 moving to the Frostwave Weave, almost all of its students left. "That means that we're going to apply for an empty Astral Combat Academy," Xiao Luo said. Lu Yin was puzzled. Why is that? Even if Astral 10 moves to the Frostwave Weave, the 3 realms and 6 Daos trial zones that you mentioned before won't be cancelled, right? Why would they leave? "I don't know about that, but I'm guessing that most of the people going to Astral 10 this time will be from the Outerverse. It's almost impossible for anyone from the Innerverse to appear. All the geniuses who can enter the Astral Combat Academy are basically monopolized by the top 8 academies. Astral 9 mostly recruits students from the endless weaves of the Outerverse, and Astral 10 will be no exception," Xiao Luo said. "Even so, the Astral Combat Academy is still extremely attractive to the Outerverse. Just by looking at your Great U Empire, you can see that the young elites from the weaves near Frostwave Weave will definitely come here. This is the only place that can compete with the Innerverse elites, and the Astral Combat Academy gives the Outerverse hope of catching up to the Innerverse," Lulu explained. "Countless geniuses are gathering to compete?" The arrival of the Astral Combat Academy was like a line that connected the Innerverse and Outerverse, connecting the young elites of the Innerverse and Outerverse. Just how great was the gap between them? Lu Yin wanted to see just how strong these so-called Innerverse geniuses were. Facing the upcoming examination, all the students were cultivating behind closed doors. Very few of them went out to chat, including Jerbak and the others. Time passed quickly, and in just one day Lu Yin saw more and more spaceships heading in the same direction. The spaceships were not all uniform and there were all sorts of strange designs. Lu Yin saw a spaceship that looked like a coffin as it flew past, and there were also spaceships that looked like swords. These spaceships all carried the elites of the Outerverse's various powers. To the Innerverse, Astral 10 was an academy that had been exiled, but to the Outerverse, it was the only hope of catching up to the Innerverse. The gap was not small at all. Another day passed, and when Lu Yin retracted his gaze from the star chart, the spaceship stopped. He looked out the window and saw that the entire sky was densely packed with spaceships of all sizes. All of them had stopped and were heading in the same direction. Lu Yin walked out of his room and went to the highest level. There were already many students here and all of them were looking forward. A continent stretched out into the endless distance in the starry sky. Above the continent was a star that emitted a scorching heat. There was one star every set distance and they were not too far apart. The entire continent was illuminated in a fiery red color. Even from such a distance, Lu Yin could feel the heat of the continent. It was so hot that even the air was distorted and evaporated, like a flame that stretched across the sky. All of the students stared blankly. What is this? At the front of the spaceship, Crown Prince Doran turned around and looked at the students solemnly. "This is Astral 10's examination for Sentinels. Pass this path and you'll reach Astral 10. If you can't, you'll either retreat or die." Lu Yin's expression turned solemn. This was a path? Indeed, it was a little narrower than the continent, but it couldn't be considered a path. It was almost as wide as Earth's radius. "Sentinel!" Lulu exclaimed, her expression turning bitter. Doran's gaze softened as he looked at Lulu. That's right, this path is for sentinels. There are a total of 10 paths to astral, 10, 3 for sentinels and 7 for melders. All sentinels are to take personal spaceships for the examination. I should have brought little tortoise, Lulu said bitterly. Little tortoise? Little tortoise? Lu Yin was speechless. Little tortoise? Ugh. That was a space-exploring beast. There were less than 20 sentinels participating in the examination in the Great Yu Empire, and Lu Yin only knew Lulu, Roz and a few others. The others were all elites who had passed the planetary trial, and he hadn't interacted with them outside of the banquet. They didn't want to meet Lu Yin and he didn't plan on getting close to them either. Good luck, Brother Lu. See you in Astral 10. Xia Luo smiled at Lu Yin. Zherbok also gave him a few words of encouragement, but Zherlin didn't come. She had given up. Lu Yin nodded, but Ghostfire walked over and whispered a threat as he passed by. You better not touch me, I can't promise to let you go, he sneered and left. Lu Yin's eyes flashed coldly as he slowly left. Doran looked at Lu Yin's back, his thoughts unknown. Jenny Anna walked over to Rocky Anna, her face pale. Uncle, this examination environment isn't good for me. Rocky Anna frowned. It can change at any time. That's good, Jenny Anna sighed. Rocky Anna felt it was a pity. If I'd known, I wouldn't have forced you to become a melder. With King Zishan's strength, he had a good chance of passing the examination and he could have brought you along. But now that you're participating in the melder examination, no one can help you. Jenny Anna clenched her teeth in fear as she looked at the path ahead. This was only a sentinel examination and she didn't know how the melders would fare. The examination had already begun the moment the path appeared. The Great Yu Empire wasn't the first to arrive. There were already many sentinels from other powers that had entered the path, including the Fire's Melt planet. Scorching suns roasted the earth, the temperature distorting the air. Groups of sentinels flew into the distance as they walked across the scorching earth, the sounds of battle and the roars of beasts echoing from time to time. On this path, the students didn't just have to face harsh environments and enemies, they also had to face powerful creatures that were all sentinels. They were also enemies that the students had to face. A group of 7 stood in the shadows looking up at the sky. Young master, the people from the Great Yu Empire will be here soon. A young man sitting on the ground looked up and smirked. Very well, I'll show them the consequences of insulting the Fire's Melt planet. There was a loud crash as the personal spacecraft crashed into the ground, kicking up a cloud of dust. As the hatch opened and Lu Yin walked out, he immediately felt the scorching heat. He looked up and saw the suns extending into the distance, growing hotter the further he went. He soared into the air and felt the air and star energy. Not bad, he said as he accelerated forward. Close to 20 sentinels from the Great Yu Empire landed on the ground, a few of them close to the 7 from Fire's Melt planet. The young man who was addressed as the young master stood up. Begin the hunt, don't leave anyone alive. The Fire's Melt planet was constantly roasted by flames, and this was their favorite environment. No one could defeat the powerhouses of the Fire's Melt planet in such a hot environment. This was their confidence. With a bang, the cabin door was kicked open and Ike walked out into the sunlight. He subconsciously closed his eyes and muttered, "To hell with the test." With that, he rose into the air and looked at his gadget. It actually deviated from its original position. Luckily, it's only a dozen kilometers away. It's very close. With that, Ike flew towards the west to meet up with the others. Suddenly, a fiery red spear pierced through the air towards Ike. Ike's expression changed and he reacted quickly to dodge. The spear brushed past his shoulder and pierced into the stone wall. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 99. Who is it? Ike was furious. He looked at his gadget and saw a power level of 3000, a peak sentinel. Almost everyone who could participate in the Astral Combat Academy's entrance exam had such a power level, so this number didn't mean much. Not far away, a man with dark red skin rushed over, his arms creating sparks as they collided and turned into a flaming spear that pierced towards Ike. Bastard from the Fire's Melt planet, Ike shouted angrily as he clashed with the man. In less than half a minute, Ike was pierced through, his abdomen scorched by the flames. The man sneered, The Great Yu Empire reneged on their promise and insulted our young master Yen Feng. This is the price. He pulled out his spear and Ike's corpse fell to the ground. The same thing happened in several other places. The people from the Fire's Melt planet seemed to know when the Great Yu Empire would land, and anyone who landed during this time was their enemy. The young man called Young Master looked at the corpse on the ground and spat. My brother was insulted, so I, Yanjing, will deal with it on his behalf. At that moment there was another explosion and a heatwave. Yanjing looked to the west and smiled cruelly before flying away. The spacecraft crashed into the ground, creating a conical crater as a young man slowly walked out. Yanjing saw this and didn't even think about it, his arms creating sparks as he stabbed his flaming spear at the young man. The young man looked up, a sharp glint in his eyes as he raised his hand, desolate palm. His palm turned dark yellow and collided with the flaming spear. There was a loud bang as the shockwave pressed down on the ground, shattering the spear inch by inch. Yanjing was shocked, his pupils shrinking to the size of needles as he felt a sharp pain in his chest. The young man's palm had sent him flying, and he didn't even look back as he soared into the distance. Yanjing spat out a mouthful of blood as he crashed into a protruding mountain wall, his face pale. That palm had almost crippled him. Who are you? He shouted as he coughed up more blood. The young man was astonished. You're not dead? I'm Mengyu. Take revenge if you can. He then quickly left. Yanjing endured the pain and squatted down. At that moment 2 people from the Fire's Melt planet arrived. Young master, who hurt you? Yanjing didn't reply and just took out some healing medicine. Soon 2 more people from the Fire's Melt planet came and surrounded Yanjing. After a long while Yanjing finally opened his eyes. He was panting heavily and his eyes were filled with shock. That palm had not only shattered his battle skill, it had also severely injured him. It was as if his life force had been sucked away. Desolate palm? Why did it sound so? Go take a look at the ship, he said weakly. A member of the Fire's Melt planet immediately flew over and came back after a while. He said, Young master, there are 2 words engraved on the back of the spaceship, us. It's Meng Yu's Meng Yu, young Meng Yu. Meng. It was only then that Yanjing remembered who he was facing. It was a genius from the Vast Earth sect, a lunatic who had refused to break through to the Sentinel realm. This person had once been invited to join the Outerverse Youth Council, but had rejected the offer. To be able to defeat a melder with an innate gift as a sentinel meant that he was a freak. Yanjing sighed. Forget about revenge, he had to avoid meeting such a person. What about the other 2? Why are there only 4 of you? He asked. One of them hesitated and then answered with an ugly expression, dead. How did they die? Yanjing was furious. One was killed by a beast here and the other was killed by a cultivator from the Great Yu Empire. Yanjing clenched his fists. Who? Don't know, never seen them before. Yanjing was helpless, he had been too naive. This was Astral Ten's trial and countless geniuses had gathered here. The Fire's Melt planet could do whatever they wanted in Frostwave Weave, but they didn't have the qualifications to face the geniuses of the entire universe. Take a break, we'll take revenge after we join the Astral Combat Academy. The others relaxed and rejoiced. They had been afraid that their young master would be too impetuous. That would be troublesome. There were too many freaks here. Elsewhere Lu Yin met up with Lulu. They weren't far from each other to begin with. Lu Yin, let's see who gets there first, Lulu said eagerly. Lu Yin looked at his gadget. Sure, wait a moment, I'm waiting for someone. Lulu was puzzled. There's someone else with us? Lu Yin's gaze was cold. I'm sending him away. Lulu didn't understand, but Lu Yin's lips curled up. Coming. Ghostfire was flying leisurely not too far away. His innate gift was destined to adapt to this environment. Suddenly, Ghostfire stopped and looked in front of him in surprise. It's you? Lu Yin stepped forward. I've been waiting for you for a long time. Ghostfire sneered. Sorry, I just killed a piece of trash who claimed to be from the Fire's Melt planet. I was worried about where to find you, but you actually dared to show up. You're courting death. Lu Yin clenched his fists. I'll settle the score with Baser later, but first I'll collect some interest from you. He then disappeared and used Flash to appear in front of Ghostfire. Ghostfire sneered. Nothing here can trap me, Ant. I'll show you the power of my void flame. Black flames spread out from his body and his body turned into nothingness. His innate gift surprised Lulu. Void flame could avoid physical attacks. Even many melders were helpless against this innate gift. Lu Yin sneered, raised a hand and punched out. White and black alternated. This was the Day-Night Fist. The Day-Night clan dominated the universe, and their inherited battle techniques were incomparably powerful. They could crush countless unique innate gifts, but this was the Day-Night clan. How could they be stopped by mere void flame? The battle techniques of the Day-Night clan included physical attacks as well as spiritual force attacks. The Day-Night Fist was a type of spiritual force attack. Lu Yin had never understood why the Day-Night Fist alternated between night and day until he faced Ghostfire. There were too many unique innate gifts in the universe, and the Day-Night clan's battle techniques were unparalleled. They could be weak but they were never ineffective. Ghostfire was initially disdainful when he punched out, but then he felt a strange contradiction. His body felt like it was being torn apart by something and he saw both night and day. Time seemed to flow between the two and his body was being deceived. Even though he knew it was fake, his body could not resist. Extreme fatigue made it impossible for him to maintain his innate gift, and he suddenly turned corporeal with a deathly pale face. Lu Yin pressed a hand against Ghostfire's abdomen. Send a message to Bazer for me. Tell him that your fate will be his in the future. He then pressed down with a palm, threefold shockwave palm. Boom. The shockwave dispersed the air and Ghostfire was smashed into the ground, creating a huge crater. Ghostfire spat out a mouthful of blood, but that was not the end. Another force exploded in his abdomen and the crater expanded once more. 3 stacks, threefold shockwave palm. Ghostfire was crippled and he fainted, unconscious. Lu Yin stood tall in the air looking down, the chill in his eyes dissipating slightly. This was just interest. Bazer's fate would definitely be 100 times worse than Ghostfire's. Lulu had watched from the side. The battle had started quickly but ended even faster. She was first surprised by Ghostfire's innate gift, and then Lu Yin's threefold shockwave palm. You've improved again, what a powerful technique. Lu Yin smiled. Let's go, let's see who gets there first. Okay. Lulu sped up. Meng Yu appeared after the two left, landing to see Ghostfire's miserable state and the crater he had crushed. 3 stacks shockwave palm. Interesting. At the same time on the Great Yu Empire's spacecraft, Doran Yushan and the rest received reports from all the participating students. The Melder exam had just begun, but the Sentinel exam was basically over with only a few people left. A student sent back news that he's being hunted down by the Fire's Melt planet, someone reported. Doran's face darkened. Looks like the Fire's Melt planet wants to start a war with the Great Yu Empire. Rocky Honor replied, that's not necessarily the case. Yen Gang paved the way for Yen Feng, allowing him to boldly pursue Princess Wendy. They shouldn't be attacking us at this time. There's only one possibility, and that's that the person who attacked us didn't understand the situation and thought that we broke the contract and humiliated Yen Feng. Yen Feng has a younger brother called Yen Jing who happens to be a sentinel. It might be him, Doran said. Should we inform the Fire's Melt planet? Someone asked. Doran replied, no need, the Fire's Melt planet is just a small fry. If we can't even get past them, we won't be able to join the Astral Combat Academy. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 100. At that moment Doran's gadget buzzed and he looked up in shock. Ghostfire was defeated. He's heavily injured and on the verge of death. Hu Qingshan and Zhu Lang looked over in surprise. Who did it? Rocky Anna was shocked. They all knew of Ghostfire's innate gift, which could turn his body into nothingness. Logically speaking, there was almost no sentinel in the Outerverse who could defeat him, and Lu Yin had only managed to suppress him with the bell. Even Tianming couldn't do it. Doran's gaze was strange. King Zishan, Lu Yin. Everyone was shocked. Rocky Anna frowned. Lu Yin defeated Ghostfire? The corner of Doran's mouth rose. This is news from the Empire. Ghostfire purposely turned on his gadget to record when he met Lu Yin. He probably wanted to spread the news, but he was easily defeated by Lu Yin and was on the verge of death. Bezer is furious. Rocky Ona was shocked. Xianxia's eyes lit up. The Outerverse Youth Council has a lot of power, but that's only limited to the younger generation. Bezer is too arrogant and looks down on the Great Yu Empire. King Zishan's battle is a good way to suppress his arrogance, Rocky Ona lamented. Doran smiled faintly. It wasn't just Bezer. Bezer was just a dog and there was a big shot from the Youth Council behind him. That person was the true mastermind behind the scenes, trying to humiliate Lu Yin to win his sister's heart. Unfortunately, these people didn't understand his sister. She was very ambitious. At this moment in the Great Yu Empire, Bezer was roaring in rage. He was the one who had sent Ghostfire to participate in the trial, but he had been beaten so badly by Lu Yin that he had lost all face. Damn it, Bezer growled. Lu Yin and Lulu were both very fast on the Sentinel path. Lulu had White Flash while Lu Yin had Flash, and he had even incorporated some of its techniques into his own. He wasn't any slower than Lulu, much to her surprise. Along the way, the two saw many youths flying into the distance and countless roaring beasts. This path was full of danger with strange plants and beasts. The only thing lacking was water, which had all evaporated. The two flew for 2 hours before stopping to rest. Lu Yin looked at his gadget and tested his power level, only to find that they were all densely packed with people with power levels of 3,000. Conservatively speaking, there are at least 1,000 people participating in the assessment, Lu Yin said tiredly. Lulu rubbed her calves. That's normal. Your Great Yu Empire sent over 100 people, so it wouldn't be strange if there were billions of people in the entire Outerverse. However, only the weaves near Frostwave Weave can participate. Each Sentinel path should have a few 100,000 people. Lu Yin was speechless. 3 Sentinel paths meant close to 1 million candidates, which meant 1 million Sentinels were equivalent to the population of a city on Earth. An army like that could sweep through the solar system. I've always been curious, why are you always dressed in green? Lulu rolled her eyes at him. The Mavis family members all wear green. Do you have a problem with that? Lu Yin looked at Lulu with a strange expression. Are you rich? Lulu rolled her eyes and smiled slyly. Yes, you want to borrow it? Sure, 3% interest. Lu Yin was speechless. I was just wondering if we were in too much of a rush. With hundreds of thousands of people taking the assessment, the competition at the beginning must be intense. More and more people will arrive later, Lulu muttered. Lu Yin had also thought about it. They were the first to arrive at Frostwave Weave, but what about the people in the nearby weaves? There was no set time for the assessment and more people would arrive later. If they rushed forward, it would be like paving the way for others. The assessment couldn't be that simple and there would definitely be trouble ahead. I don't want to work for others. Let's wait and rest for a few days, Lu Yin said after some thought. Lulu nodded. Okay. Their surroundings were mostly barren mountain ranges and the ground was scorching hot. Lu Yin stood on a withered mountain and looked around. There were people flying past in the sky from time to time, but he didn't know how the others were doing. 20 hours passed quickly, and Lu Yin and Lulu were resting at the foot of the mountain when the world suddenly darkened. The sun in the sky dimmed at the same time and the land entered winter. Extremely cold air swept across the land, instantly freezing the once scorching ground. Lulu exclaimed, "A super powerhouse has made a move to change the weather." As expected of the Astral Combat Academy. Lu Yin looked up and stared at the sky in shock. A series of suns had been frozen at the same time, and endless cold air had descended from the sky. This was the method of an absolute powerhouse and it wasn't something he could imagine. If one looked at it from the distance, the entire path would look like a popsicle. Countless people looked on in shock. 10 paths had been frozen at the same time, and the extremely cold air swept across them without affecting the sky at all. Doran and the others gulped. This method was unimaginable and it was beyond their understanding. Explorers ranged from the weakest explorer to the cruiser to the hunter. The Great Yu Empire had them all, but even they couldn't reach this level. This was the method of a terrifying existence that surpassed the hunter class. In terms of power level, this person's power level exceeded 100,000. Xianxia's eyes burned with passion. He could destroy a path, but he couldn't freeze all 10. This was the limit of power that he had always pursued. The youths of this generation were too lucky to have the opportunity to enter the Astral Combat Academy and experience a power that surpassed the outerverse. To dim the sky and freeze the suns was a power that shocked everyone. They couldn't think of anything else. They were too far away from this level of power. Lu Yin felt the chill emanating from the ground and sucked in a breath of cold air. Humans could actually reach such a level. Don't look, you won't understand. Even explorers can't. The level of power is different, Lulu said, pouting. Lu Yin's eyes burned with passion. This path was created, right? Who knows? Maybe it was created by tearing apart a star system, Lulu said casually. Lu Yin looked at Lulu. Does the Mavis family have such a powerhouse? Lulu rolled her eyes. I don't know, I don't want to talk about it. Even if Lulu didn't say anything, Lu Yin could guess. Without such a powerhouse, how could the Mavis family dominate the economy? He raised his head to look at the sky, where the cold winds of the night unconsciously made him feel lonely. Lu Yin's gaze was tranquil as he had nothing to reminisce about. He had lost his memories and the only thing worth reminiscing about was Earth. That planet could be considered his home, but he did not know how it was doing. After an unknown amount of time, Lu Yin leaned against the cold mountain wall and counted silently. More than 700 people had flown over his head during this time, and this was just his surroundings. The width of the Sentinel Path was equivalent to the radius of Earth, so a conservative estimate suggested that more than 100,000 people had passed by. When it was about time, Lu Yin stood up. Let's go. Lulu grunted and clenched her fists. Suddenly, a black dot in front of them rapidly approached and flew towards them. The two didn't move as they watched the black dot approach. It was a young man. The young man was Meng Yu, who had seen Ghostfire's miserable state and the strength of the 3 stacks technique. He chased after Lu Yin and Lulu, not looking at Lu Yin but noticing Lulu. Her green clothes were too eye-catching, but the two soon disappeared. Meng Yu was helpless. He had circled around for a long time but still couldn't find them. He had thought that he wouldn't be able to catch up, but he hadn't expected to run into them here. Landing on a short hill, Meng Yu stared at Lu Yin and took out Ghostfire's photo. Did you defeat this person? Lu Yin frowned. What does that have to do with you? Meng Yu was excited. Come, let's spar. Lu Yin's eyes narrowed. You want to avenge him? Meng Yu didn't mind. It has nothing to do with him. I'm interested in your battle technique. The 3 stacks technique should be from Grand Topweave's 9 stacks sect. You've integrated it into your shockwave palm and I want to test its power. Not interested. Lu Yin's tone was flat. He didn't want to waste his energy fighting an insignificant person. Meng Yu didn't say anything else and immediately attacked. He rushed towards Lu Yin and lashed out with a kick that carried a hint of ferocity. Lu Yin dodged the attack with a flash and replied coldly, If you want to fight, go find someone else. We're in the middle of a test and I don't have time to play with you. That's not up to you. Meng Yu raised a palm and sent it towards Lu Yin. He knew that he couldn't match up to Lu Yin's speed, so he could only use the desolate palm to catch Lu Yin off guard and decide the victor with a single blow. Meng Yu pursued the limits of the Sentinel realm and wanted to fight any Sentinel. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.